Chapter 331. Mo Jingshan's eyes were dark and indifferent, but his indifferent eyes soon made Su Jilan feel a chill from the soles of her feet to the top and spread all over her body. Jinwan's smile disappeared because of his appearance. We'll let you out of the ward. Jingshan, after several years, she finally saw him standing in front of her instead of watching the financial news. Su Jilan's composure suddenly cracked, and her eyes were glued to him. The man was dressed in a light blue hospital gown. He was as cold and handsome as ever. His face was obviously pale, but the coldness in the man's eyes was almost seeping out. He looked at her calmly with his dark eyes, without the slightest bit of politeness that an old friend should have. Seeing Mo Jingshan's pale face and the faint blood on the back of his hand, Jinwan guessed how he came here. Her heart clenched, and she was about to get up to help him, but the woman in blue, standing by the bed in front of her, quickly walked up to him. Jingshan, how are you hurt? Where on earth did you come back from? How did you get hurt like this? Su Jilan looked concerned. She had come up to the man and was about to reach out to help him, when the man in front of her glanced at her coldly. Su Jilan's hand, which was about to touch his arm, paused and hesitated before putting it down, but she clenched the bag in her hand. She couldn't hide the concern in her eyes, and her voice was gentle and sweet, not as cold and arrogant as when she was talking to Jinwan. I heard that you've been in this hospital for several days. You still look so pale after so many days. Where are you hurt? Is it very serious? Is it more serious than that time? What did you just say? Mo Jingshan didn't answer her question, but asked back in a low voice. The man's handsome face was calm and indifferent, and his eyes were distant and distant. In Su Jilan's view, his indifference was so sharp and silent that her nerves were trembling. What can I say? I came to see Miss G and care about the relationship between you and her. After all, I've been through it. After a moment of silence, Su Jilan suddenly gave a natural smile and stared at the man's face, refusing to let go of any expression on his face, even if it was indifferent. Mo Jingshan was cold and indifferent. He did not plan on answering her words. He said softly, "Recently, Elder Su's thoughts haven't been in the right place. You clearly know that my place is a forbidden area to your Su family, but you still turn a blind eye to it and barge in?" Being completely ignored in front of Jinwan, Su Jilan had to calm down even if she was embarrassed. She looked at him, suddenly smiled, and then turned to Jinwan, whose face had darkened because of Mo Jingshan's appearance. After all, it's rare for you to be injured and hospitalized. I have more experience in taking care of you than Miss G. When you were in a coma, I have been watching over you. Now that I heard you were here and in the same hospital, I had to come and see you. Mo Jingshan didn't say anything at first. He just glanced at her coldly and then said in a cold voice, "If I remember correctly, when I was in a coma, I was taken care of by Nan Heng's men. Miss Su occasionally appeared when I was in a coma. I don't know if you have experience in taking care of people, but Miss G is my wife. It's natural for her to take care of me. Don't you worry too much." Su Jilan didn't speak. When she heard Mo Jingshan say that Jinwan was his wife, her eyes were fixed on him. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "Jingshan, what I care about most now is your physical condition. As for who your wife is, Miss G has just repeatedly emphasized this matter to me. She has been reminding me all the time that she is now the winner. You are so injured, and I have no time to think about other things. The most important thing is you." Mo Jingshan's tone was still indifferent. "Do I need her to emphasize who my wife is to you again and again? Isn't it obvious to everyone? What I mean is, Miss G might be afraid that I might pose a threat to her, so she kept emphasizing her body. Really? But why did I hear you just list a few examples in front of my wife?" Mo Jingshan's dark eyes coldly swept over Su Xue's face. "For example, using your most common means to control people with power and money? Do you think her temper is so soft that she would allow you to bully her like this? Didn't you see what happened to Su Xue? It doesn't matter if you lose a cousin, but do you want to lose yourself as well?" Jinwan really didn't think she was bullied. After all, she and Su Jilan were evenly matched. But when she suddenly heard these words from Mo Jingshan's mouth, She was so moved that she almost burst into tears. Su Zhilan stared at the man's cold eyes. "You won't hurt me." At this time, the door of the ward was suddenly opened, and Nanheng, who had been listening outside for a long time, was standing there with his eyebrows raised. "I'm sorry. I found that no one was in the ward upstairs, so I came here to have a look, only to hear such a big drama." Nanheng glanced around with a faint smile and finally rested his eyes on Su Zhilan, saying flatly, "I advise Miss Su to stay away from Jinwan. Mo Jingshan treasures his wife very much. Let alone your threats. Even if you appear in front of Jinwan and affect her mood, it's enough to make him very unhappy with you." Su Zhilan's eyebrows twitched. Obviously, she didn't expect that they all knew about the photos. Besides, Nanheng raised his hand and casually tidied up his cuffs. There was a cold sneer on the corner of his mouth, and he said slowly, "We didn't touch you back then because the Su family still had a certain status in the American arms industry. Both of us kept each other in check, and we're in the same boat. If the Su family didn't act rashly, we wouldn't either. But now, in order to protect himself, Elder Su has handed over everything in his hands. He was willing to be abandoned to protect the Su family's small territory in the business world. He has gotten what he wanted, but he has lost the condition to keep us in check." Hearing this, Su Zhilan's suppressed calmness seemed to crack. She looked up at Mo Jingshun, who had been indifferent all this time. Chapter 332. Su Zhilan's fingers trembled silently. She stared at the man with cold eyes in front of her. "My grandfather was forced to hand over those management rights because of you." Kay couldn't bear to listen anymore. Although he had met Miss Su before, when he saw her questioning Mr. Mo in such an attitude, he couldn't help interrupting. "Miss Su, Mr. Mo has been very kind to your Su family. If it weren't for the fact that Elder Su and Shine Group had a lot of mutual ties, the Su family would have faced more than just handing over the management rights. But Miss Su, it's not right for you to keep pestering him. You should have known it when Mr. Mo left the United States." "I don't understand." Su Zhilan bit her lower lip and stared at Mo Jingshan's calm face. "So, was I used by you? You want to use me to break through the last barrier between you and the Su family? You want to ruthlessly squeeze the evenly matched party in your hands? Right now, the Su family can only be at the peak of their power in the righteous path, but they are blocked by you on the other path." Mo Jingshan's thin lips said calmly, "I didn't use you. Wasn't it Miss Su's deliberate deception?" "Me? What did I deceive you?" Su Zhilan's face suddenly tightened. Mo Jingshan's lips curved imperceptibly. "When I was in a coma for many days, when I woke up, you stood in the ward and told a lie with my father. Don't you remember?" Su Zhilan paused. "You mean, I said I rescued you from the Los Angeles River?" Jinwan, who hadn't participated in these things and had been a little confused, suddenly turned to look at Su Zhilan. Mo Jingshan indifferently withdrew his gaze from Su Zhilan's face. "In order to cooperate with my father's selfish desire to keep me in the United States, the Su family and he made up a lie together, using the so-called kindness and friendship to facilitate our relationship." The corners of Mo Jingshan's lips lifted, his eyes filled with mockery. "Since you have the guts to fabricate lies in front of me, you should be able to accept my way of repaying you. The Su family was shrewd, and I cooperated with you effortlessly. Coincidentally, the Su family had something I wanted, so I patiently played with you for 2 years. At the end of the day, Miss Su was used by her own grandfather. Even if this dirty water were to be poured on me, it wouldn't be my turn." Su Zhilan couldn't help but tremble harder. She wanted to say something, but when the words were on the tip of her tongue, she couldn't say them. She just looked at the man in front of her with red eyes. "Why are you so sure that I was lying back then? At that time, you were covered in blood and barely had a breath left. I really drove there and sent you to the hospital. Jingshun, I can understand that you have prejudice against the Su family, but you can't deny my feelings for you. Are you sure you want to continue making up this useless story?" Mo Jingshan's cold voice rang in front of her. Due to his poor condition, the man's voice was low and cold. Jinwan sat on the bed, silently wanting to swear. although it might not be particularly important whether she had saved him or not, and she really didn't take it to heart. What they had experienced for so long could not be summed up by such a small thing. But Miss Sue was really confident to lie so blatantly. She didn't expect that the man was sitting here watching, did she? Mo Jingshan's attitude was so firm and cold that all the explanations on the tip of Su Zhilan's tongue seemed to become so tasteless in an instant. She was silent for a moment, looked at the man's eyes that were as calm as the sea, and gradually softened her voice. Jingshan, no matter what the reason is, we used to be together. You can't be so heartless. And Mo Jingshan's lips curved into a cold smile. Before you sent Jean Wan that doll in the wedding dress, if I had touched the Su family in the slightest, I would have been heartless. The warning in his words was clear enough. Touching Jean Wan was tantamount to touching his bottom line. He could do heartless things once and twice. Even if he was accused of being heartless, he would not let go of the Su family easily. Su Zhilan couldn't help saying, Miss G is not a child. Why is she so delicate? It's just a prank. Can a few blades turn the world upside down? She then said unwillingly with red eyes, even what Su Shui did was just a fight for me. But all of you were so ruthless towards her that it's already a miracle that she's still alive. And you just strangled the Su family's lifeline, made it difficult for the Su family to move forward, and had my grandfather lock me up. Mo Jingshan, I've been by your side for 2 years, loved you, and waited for you for so many years. And this is how you treat me? Mo Jingshan closed his eyes, and there was a trace of paleness and impatience between his brows. Su Zhilan saw that he couldn't bear it for so long. After a moment of silence, she softened her voice. Jingshan, don't be angry. I'll help you back to the ward first. You're still. With that, she hurriedly reached out to help him. Mrs. M.O. Kay suddenly winked at Jean Wan. Seeing that Mo Jingshan avoided Su Zhilan's hand, but Su Zhilan insisted on helping him, Jean Wan pursed her lips, got up, and put her hand on Mo Jingshan's arm. Mo Jingshan leaned toward her. Obviously, he couldn't hold on any longer. How many times has the doctor told you not to get out of bed these days? Did you pull out the needle yourself? Don't you feel any pain at all? Jean Wan was standing closest to Mo Jingshan now. When most of the man's body almost leaned toward her, she couldn't help muttering beside him. What if the wound has a problem again? Aren't you afraid that the wound will be inflamed repeatedly, leading to infection and fever, and finally burn into a fool? Kay, who was standing behind, she was really CEO Mo's wife. Why didn't she learn to be gentler than Miss Sue at a time like this? How could she insult Mr. Mo? Su Zhilan watched Mo Jingshan leaning against Jean Wan defenselessly and suddenly looked at Jean Wan's face. For a moment, Jean Wan seemed to see some kind of determination and coldness in her eyes. Although it flashed away, obviously she was not the only one who saw it. Chapter 333. Jean Wan raised her hand and held Mo Jingshan's arm, noticing that at that moment, he seemed to have intentionally moved in front of her. She remembered that Feng Ling had said that Miss Su had intermittent mania, but Su Zhilan couldn't be so irrational as to do anything out of line in such a place. At the same time, Mo Jingshan took Jean Wan's hand and held it, silently giving her a sense of steadiness and peace, not letting her be affected by these things. Their movements didn't escape Su Zhilan's eyes. Su Zhilan looked at their interlocked hands and said bitterly, Jingshan, we've been together for 2 years. I've worked overtime with you, and I've gone on business trips with you. You and I have experienced as much as Jean Wan. I've been honest with you. I didn't mean to lie to you, but it's unfair for you to deny my feelings for you. I've been waiting for you for so many years. Enough. Mo Jingshan's pale face added more indifference to his clear and cold look. Starting with a lie is doomed to have no ending. Miss Sue's feelings are just your obsession. I don't owe you anything, and I don't need to be responsible for you. Go. Don't embarrass yourself too much. Miss Sue. Kate consciously took it as Mr. Mo's order, so he immediately approached Su Zhilan and said politely, Mr. and Mrs. Mo are not in good health now. Please leave. Su Zhilan nodded and said, Mr. and Mrs. Mo, please leave. Su Zhilan still wanted to speak, but Kay stood in front of her. Su Zhilan's hands kept shaking. She tried to control her emotions, but the sadness in her eyes was very obvious. The atmosphere here was really not good for her. She took a deep breath and said, Okay, I'll go back. Jingshun, take care of yourself. When you're discharged from the hospital, I'll miss Su, please. Before she finished speaking, Kay, who had been standing in front of her, reached out to the door. Su Zhilan clenched her fingers, managed to maintain the last trace of demeanor, and walked out. Kay decisively blocked her view all the way to prevent her from looking into the ward. When the two of them walked away, Nan Hung, who had been leaning against the door of the ward, glanced at Mo Jingshun, whose face was frighteningly pale. Are you sure you can hold on? As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Jingshun couldn't answer him at all. With Jin Wan's cry of surprise, the man in front of her leaned toward her. She rushed to hold him. Jin Wan was startled. She immediately tightened her grip on him, afraid that he would fall. Nan Hung frowned and turned to call the nurse. When the doctor and nurse came over and hurriedly helped Mo Jingshun up, Jin Wan looked at the blood on her hand, and then at the blood oozing from the back of Mo Jingshun's light blue hospital gown. Her heart skipped a beat. His ward was 4 floors away from hers. Su Zhilan hadn't been here for long, and he had suddenly come. How on earth did he get the news, pull out the needles, and come here? His injury wasn't just a simple flesh wound. He had heard from the doctor that the sharp part of the gun, but didn't hurt his bones, but the wound was so deep that the bone could be seen. It wasn't easy for him to recuperate for 2 or 3 days. When it was almost healed, he got out of bed again. It was getting dark. Jin Wan, you're really a jinx. Outside the ward, Nan Hung looked at the woman standing in front of the door with a sigh. Jin Wan, after Mo Jingshun was brought back to the ward by the medical staff, the wound was retreated, the bleeding was stopped, and the medicine was applied. As she said, Mo Jingshun's wound was sore and the inflammation had not subsided. A few hours later, Mo Jingshun began to have a high fever, and his temperature soared to 40 degrees. If he hadn't been in the hospital, he might really even burn out if the fever had been delayed any longer. The medical staff was still in the ward, so Jin Wan couldn't go in now. She could only stand outside and accept the baptism of Nan Heng's eyes. I've been watching him every moment of the day and told him not to move, but when I went back to the ward to take a shower, you all forgot to keep an eye on him. Kay didn't dare to stop him, and the others didn't know to stop him either. Didn't they know that the wound on his back would have a problem if he came out like this? So what if I stopped him? It's your own man who was scared today. How can you blame it on me? Jin Wan glared at him. I've just been bombarded by my ex-girlfriend and stimulated physically and mentally, and faced with my husband's high fever and coma. Can't you take my mood into consideration and comfort me a little? Nan Hung rolled his eyes at her. I don't see how you've been stimulated by your ex-girlfriend. Jin Wan also glared at him. I haven't had time to be stimulated, but the person you failed to stop has rushed into the ward. You want to be stimulated, don't you? Nan Hung raised his cold eyebrows. If you're willing to listen, I don't mind telling you how Mo Jingshun and Su Zhilan got together. No matter how sincere and how insincere they were, Miss Su is right. They've been together for 2 years, and it's not impossible for them to forget each other. It's not impossible for them to fall in love with each other over time. I don't want to listen. Jin Wan looked resolute. Didn't you just say you want to be stimulated? I find that since Mo Jingshun and I got together, you've been particularly against us. I'm not interested in Su Zhilan's past, but I'm very interested in you now. Why are you interested in me? You act as if you'll die if you don't say something to me every day. I always feel as if I've robbed you, man. Nan Hung, do you have feelings for Mo Jingshun? Jin Wan looked at him meaningfully, and when Nan Hung choked on the cigarette and coughed several times, she glanced at Feng Ling, who had just come out of the elevator. Nan Hung was coughing hard. Feng Ling came over, took a strange look at him, and then looked at Jin Wan flatly. Mrs. Mo, I've arranged for other people to guard your ward. No one will disturb you in the future. Jin Wan nodded. In fact, if it had been anyone else, they wouldn't have been able to get in. After all, Su Zhilan had been friends with them before, so it was understandable that they didn't dare to block her blatantly. Chapter 334. Understanding the meaning behind Jin Wan's words, Feng Ling said, "We'll investigate those people. Right now, they've already been replaced. Don't worry." Not long after, the doctor came out of the ward. He said that Mo Jingshan had been given an injection to reduce his fever, but his fever was still obvious. His body temperature was only under 39 degrees, and he was still running a high fever. In the next few hours, before his fever completely subsided, someone would have to stay up all night to take care of him and lower his body temperature. They would also have to feed him warm water frequently. With Jin Wan here, naturally, no one would snatch this task from her. In the dead of the night, Nan Hung returned to the base. Feng Ling rested on the long bench outside the ward. The room was quiet. Mo Jingshan was still sleeping. His complexion was different from when he was running a high fever. Right now, his body temperature had dropped slightly. The man's usually handsome face was pale. He was sleeping too quietly. Jin Wan felt even more anxious in her heart. She did not know when his injuries would completely recover. She reached out to touch his forehead. It was indeed still very hot. Jin Wan stood up to bring in the new ice pack that the nurse had just brought in. After holding it in her hand for a while, she carefully placed it on his head. Although Mo Jingshan was unconscious, he did not seem to be sleeping well. Due to the coldness on his head, he unconsciously furrowed his brows. Jin Wan gently placed her hand on his shoulder, patting him gently as she said, "You're running a fever. Sleep well. Right now, you don't have to worry about anything. You just need to sleep well and bring your fever down as soon as possible." She was not sure if her words were effective or if Mo Jingshan was not too awake, but not long after she spoke, the man's breathing returned to normal. He had already fallen into a deep sleep. Such an obedient Mo Jingshan, if not for his worrying pale complexion, Jin Wan would have found him slightly adorable. His appearance when he was asleep was completely different from when he was awake. In this world, it was likely that not many people would have the opportunity to see such a fragile, quiet, and defenseless Mo Jingshan. Jin Wan pulled a chair over and sat by the bed. From time to time, she touched his head and hands and occasionally used the electronic thermometer to measure his temperature. For 2 consecutive hours, she tried to find a way to feed him warm water and wipe his palms and neck with a towel dipped in warm water. 2 hours later, Mo Jingshan's body temperature finally dropped to around 37 degrees. After confirming that his fever was gone, Jin Wan carefully removed the ice pack from his head and gently wiped his face. She then sat by the bed and watched him sleep under the faint light of the ward. The man's face was still pale. He just lay quietly on the bed. The bruise on his brow bone a few days ago had disappeared. His clean appearance had an inexplicable kind of sickly beauty. She recalled how this man had stood in her hospital room during the day and treated Su Jilan with no emotion. He was so cold that he seemed to be able to isolate himself from all other women except for her. Jin Wan supported her chin with one hand and leaned against the edge of the bed. She watched the man's sleeping face and gently held his hand. She slowly and gently intertwined her fingers with his, palm against palm. Jin Wan did not know how she had fallen asleep. When she suddenly woke up, she felt that her head was slightly heavy. She abruptly raised her eyes and met the man's ink-black eyes. "When did you wake up?" Feeling that his hand had unknowingly touched her head, Jin Wan rushed to sit up straight and raise her hand to gently pull it down. She felt the temperature of his hand and confirmed that his fever was no longer rising. Only then did she relax. "I actually fell asleep. Wait a moment. I'll go call the doctor." "There's no need to call the doctor. Your fever has already subsided. What's the point of calling them?" Mo Jingshan held her hand and did not let her go. "You had a high fever last night and only went down after midnight. Let the doctor come and check. It's just an infection. I'll just take a few more days of anti-inflammatory medicine and injections. There's no need to make such a big fuss." The man's voice was lower than a few days ago, but each word was clear. "You took care of me for an entire night. Have you forgotten that you're pregnant? There are senior nurses in the hospital, but if they're here, it won't be convenient for me to come in to see you. Besides, your fever was too serious last night. If I'm not here, I won't be able to sleep. I might as well stay here to watch over you. Jinwan smiled and habitually touched his forehead. Then I'll call Feng Ling to buy some food. Feeling his body temperature, Jinwan sat by the bed with a sigh of relief and rubbed her face against his palm. She said with dim eyes, "Don't do this again in the future. I'm afraid that the wound will become infected, and you pulled out the anti-inflammatory needle. In fact, whether it's Miss Sue or anyone else, it doesn't matter. Even if you want to protect me, you have to see if your body can take it. I'm not a little white flower that can be easily bullied. As long as I'm firm enough, no one can do anything to me. But now that you're injured like this, if we stand outside and are blown by the wind, the first one to fall will definitely be you. No matter how powerful you are, you have to know your limits now, okay? You speak as if I'm already so old that I can't get out of bed with a little injury. I'm not that fragile." The man chuckled lightly. "TSK, then get out of bed if you have the ability. If you have the ability, don't let the wound get infected. An inflamed high fever is more serious than a normal cold. It's really scary to have a fever of 40 degrees Celsius and be unconscious." Jinwan picked up a hospital note by the side. On it was written the temperature she had recorded when she helped him take his temperature several times last night. "Look at it yourself. If I had a fever like this, wouldn't you be angry at me for not taking care of my body?" Mo Jingshan glanced at it and did not argue with her. He gently patted her hand, asking mildly, "Where's Nan Hung?" "He returned to the base last night. I don't know if he has come to the hospital yet. Are you looking for him?" Jinwan placed the note back and turned to pour him a cup of warm water. You took care of me here for an entire night last night. Rest well today. Call Nan Hung for me." "All right, I'll call him in a bit. Lie down and don't move." Jinwan brought the cup over and fed him a few mouthfuls of water with a spoon. Mo Jingshan felt somewhat helpless because of her careful feeding him water. Right now, Jinwan was quite obsessed with feeding him. Chapter 335. After calling Nan Hung, Jinwan turned to see that Feng Ling had gotten up from the lounge chair in the corridor and was walking over. "You didn't sleep all night?" Jinwan asked. Feng Ling didn't answer, but glanced into the ward. "How is it? Is Mr. Mo awake?" "He's awake. He must have something to talk to Nan Hung alone. I just called Nan Hung. He'll be here soon." Jinwan glanced at Feng Ling. "You weren't in the hospital yesterday afternoon. Where did you go?" Feng Ling paused and said lightly, "I dealt with some personal matters." Jinwan glanced at her again. Even though she could see that Feng Ling had something on her mind, she didn't ask more and just asked her to help buy some food. Jinwan took care of Mo Jingshan all night and didn't sleep well. Her face was haggard that she didn't notice. Feng Ling was now in charge of Jinwan's daily needs and knew some of her habits like the back of her hand. Seeing that Jinwan didn't intend to sleep after returning to the ward and didn't look very good, she went out to buy some food and came back with other things on her way back. "Mrs. Mo, do you want a mask?" When Feng Ling pushed the door open, Jinwan was lying on the bed with her eyes closed, trying to sleep. But she really couldn't sleep. As soon as she closed her eyes, she saw the way Su Jilan looked at Mo Jingshan yesterday. How much did she love him that she would throw away all her self-esteem and pride to try to hold on to even the slightest bit of affection for him? To be honest, Jinwan didn't like that particularly persistent look in her eyes. In the end, Feng Ling's words successfully caused Jinwan to open her eyes. She sat up on the bed, only to see Feng Ling holding a bag in her hand and placing several different brands of facial masks on her bed. Why did you buy these things?" Jinwan was surprised. She couldn't imagine Feng Ling standing in front of the skincare counter. "I saw that you don't look well. I heard that women often have to use masks when their skin is not in good condition. I haven't used this kind of thing before and didn't know which brand was better. Just now, I passed by the mall and bought a few." Hearing her words, Jinwan picked up 2 of the masks and looked at them. The corner of her mouth twitched. It was obvious that Feng Ling had never used any skincare products before. She had never used any facial masks either. In addition to whitening and moisturizing products, there were even products to tighten and remove wrinkles. The 2 of them were only in their early 20s, and their faces were full of collagen. They were very young, so how could they use these things? You haven't used it before? Jinwan suddenly smiled and looked up at her. Feng Ling met her bright eyes and instantly understood what she meant. She took a step back and said, "Mrs. Mo, these are all for you, but I don't need that much." Jinwan picked up 2 of the simplest moisturizing masks and waved to her. "Come here, don't hide so far away. Anyway, Nanheng is now in Mo Jingshan's ward, and the 2 of us can't go in. Instead of waiting here, we might as well do the masks together. You bought them anyway." Jinwan didn't usually use these things, but she knew better than Feng Ling. Seeing Feng Ling's determined expression, she narrowed her eyes and smiled. "You really don't want to try them? You've been in the base for so many years. Although your skin is good, it's still a little rough. Since you bought so many masks, why don't you try them with me? I'd better forget it. I don't know how to use these things, and why do I need such good skin?" Feng Ling continued to take a step back. Jinwan raised her eyebrows. "You really don't think of yourself as a woman?" Feng Ling hesitated, looked at the things in Jinwan's hands, and asked after a long while, "Do I really not look like a woman?" Jinwan rested her chin on one hand and sat on the bed. She looked at Feng Ling, who had been troubled recently and seemed to be a little self-doubtful. "Your hair looked good when it was longer, but who knows what happened to you? You cut it so short. I think even Kay's hair is longer than yours." Feng Ling obviously had no idea whether the length of hair was good or not. "I'm not used to long hair. It's more comfortable to have short hair." "Then when you look in the mirror and see your short hair, do you think you look like a woman?" Jinwan raised her eyebrows. "I rarely look in the mirror." In the end, Feng Ling couldn't persuade Jinwan and was dragged into the bathroom by Jinwan. The 2 women washed their faces in front of the mirror, rubbed foam on their faces, and put the masks on their faces. At first, Feng Ling didn't even know how to put on the masks, and Jinwan taught her little by little. Unexpectedly, this woman, who could shoot the whole world with a gun, was defeated by a mask. Finally, after Feng Ling tore up 3 masks, Jinwan successfully got her to stick a complete mask on her face. No one who passed by this ward could imagine what these 2 women were doing in the middle of their busy lives. Kay came over to knock on the door, and Jinwan answered. Feng Ling had just come out of the bathroom and didn't realize that someone was coming in. So when the door was pushed open from the outside, Feng Ling's footsteps paused. Kate had come to find Feng Ling, but as soon as he came in, he saw the 2 women with masks on their faces. There were several holes in the white masks, and the 2 women stared in his direction at the same time with their eyes almost the same size. Jinwan was fine, but when Feng Ling saw Kay's shocked expression, she immediately took off the mask on her face with a cold face. Kay, however, suddenly raised his mobile phone and took a photo of Feng Ling. Feng Ling paused in her action of taking off the mask. "Why did you take a photo of me?" "Damn it. I can see Feng Ling wearing a mask in my lifetime. I must show this photo to boss." After saying that, Kay forgot the purpose of his visit. Just as Feng Ling was about to grab him, he opened the door and slipped away as if there was oil on the soles of his feet. "Kay, delete the photo for me." Feng Ling suddenly chased after him. Jinwan was speechless as she watched the 2 of them dash out like the wind. First of all, Kay was as good as Feng Ling, and she didn't know whether Feng Ling could catch up with him. After all, Kay was tall and had long legs, but Feng Ling ran out with a mask on her face. Was she planning to let the whole hospital see her? Chapter 336. "Give me your cell phone." Feng Ling glared at him fiercely. Kay pursed his lips and pointed at Feng Ling's face with his chin. "You just came here like this. It doesn't matter if I delete the photo or not, huh?" Feng Ling froze and realized that she just came out like this. She turned her eyes abruptly and met Nanheng's eyes. "What the hell are you doing?" Nanheng gave her a strange look. "Feng Ling." Nanheng reached out and peeled off the mask paper on Feng Ling's face. Seeing her face was covered with water, he raised his eyebrows and touched her chin with his fingers, only to touch a handful of wet and sticky essence. He immediately shook his hand in disgust. "What the hell is this? Wet and sticky?" Jinwan had just washed her face and came over when she heard Nan Heng's ridicule from a distance. Feng Ling was about to raise her sleeve to wipe her face when Jin Wan had come up to her and handed her the wet towel she had just brought. She then glanced at Kay, who was watching the fun, and Nan Heng, who was wiping his hand on Kay's clothes. Sure enough, you can't blame our Feng Ling for not being feminine. She stays with you guys every day. It's strange that she can be feminine. Feng Ling had wiped her face clean, but because she wiped too hard, the skin on her cheeks was a little red. Nan Heng glanced at Jin Wan and then at Feng Ling. He saw the red patch on her snow-white face, which looked much better than usual, and then at Feng Ling's collar, which was pulled down a lot when she washed her face. Looking at her white skin under the collar, he didn't speak. You two women stayed here all night last night and didn't rest in the ward today. You're really energetic. Nan Heng moved his eyes away from Feng Ling's face and said coldly. Every time Jin Wan bumped into Nan Heng, they would argue with each other. Right now, seeing that Feng Ling was clearly unhappy, she did not say much. She threw Nan Heng a good luck expression and glanced at the door of the ward. Are you done talking? Has he fallen asleep again? I haven't slept yet. I just received a call from the MO Corporation in High City, and the call hasn't ended yet. Nan Heng said and joked. Are you going to stay in this ward and not leave? Do you need to ask the doctor to move your bed to this room so that you can stay here with him? That way, you won't have to squeeze into the same bed. Jin Wan knew he was teasing her, but she didn't reject him. She smiled. It seems like a good idea. Nan Heng sneered. In your dreams. Mrs. Mo, I'm going to wash my face. Feng Ling suddenly said coldly and turned to leave. Jin Wan turned to follow her. Seeing Feng Ling's cold face, she was about to comfort her. After all, Kay was just joking, and Nan Heng was obviously ridiculing her. She couldn't let Feng Ling suffer such a blow just because she rarely took a step in the direction of a woman. Before she could finish her sentence, the elevator door suddenly opened as soon as they reached the elevator. As soon as she met the eyes of the two people inside, Jin Wan paused. The two people inside also fixed their eyes on her when they saw her. Dad. Jin Wan hesitated and politely addressed him with this word. Mo Xiaozi looked at her coldly. Jingshen is hospitalized here. You really hit it well. Didn't you even inform us? Jin Wan moved her eyes from Shuyan behind him and looked at Mo Xiaozi, saying, I'm sorry. We came back in a hurry and haven't left the hospital these days. It's my negligence not to inform you in time, but I really don't have your contact information. Ever since the bet with the Mo family that was worth tens of millions a week, Mo Xiaozi didn't have much reason to pick on her. After living in harmony for so long, she put away her sharp-tongued side. The first thing she said was to directly and sincerely apologize. This also helped Mo Xiaozi, who came with anger, to calm down a little. Mo Xiaozi came out, took a look at Jin Wan, and then at Feng Ling, who didn't plan to go back to wash her face and just stood by Jin Wan's side. He looked at the two of them and finally fell on Jin Wan's face. How is Jingshen's injury? Jin Wan wasn't sure if he knew about Mo Jingshen's experience, but since Father Mo had been in the United States for so many years, he must know what his son had done under his nose. She thought about it and didn't say too much, but just said, it's not light, but it's much better now. The operation was done 4 days ago. He just needs to rest in the hospital for a while. Getting a reassuring answer, Mo Xiaozi nodded and turned to look at Shuyan, who was standing silently behind him. Shuyan, go see Jingshen. If he needs anything, ask him to tell us. He's been injured for so many days, but he didn't inform us. He really doesn't take us, his parents, seriously at all. Jin Wan turned to see Shuyan walking directly to the ward and twitched her lips. Before she spoke, Mo Xiaozi said coldly, after Jingshen is discharged from the hospital, remember to let him stay in the United States for a while. High City only has grandfather Mo and the Mo family's old house. It's really meaningless for him to stay in High City. For him, his real home is still in Los Angeles. He hasn't been home for several years. Even if he doesn't plan to take over Shine Group, he should go back to see his mother. Aren't you going to tell him in person about going home? Jin Wan asked. Mo Xiaozi's face was cold. He wanted to say in person, although he didn't want to admit it. It was clear that Jin Wan's words were more effective than his. On the other side, outside Mo Jingshin's ward, and Shuyan was carrying some nutrition products and a fruit basket. As soon as she walked over, she was blocked by Nan Hung with a cigarette in his mouth. Nan Hung didn't light the cigarette in his mouth. He narrowed his eyes coldly and glanced at her. "Missin, are you here to visit on behalf of Chairman Mo?" And Shuyan nodded politely to him. "Yes, Chairman Mo asked me to see Jingshin." Nan Hung smiled insincerely, but his smile was obviously cold. His tall figure still blocked the door of the ward, and he said coldly, "He is resting. It's really inconvenient for Miss and to go in like this. If you need any condolences or instructions, just say it to Mrs. Mo, and she will help you convey them." Jin Wan stood on the side of the elevator and heard Nan Hung's words. She silently gave Nan Hung a thumbs up in her heart. Usually, Nan Hung could say whatever he liked to her, but when it was time for him to take action, he was really reliable. Although Mo Xiaoza had taken Shuyan back to the United States, he brought her here today and now asked Shuyan to visit Mo Jingshin. Obviously, he was still a little tempted and hadn't completely given up. Besides, this was the United States, Shine's territory, so he was even more brazen. Chapter 337. Mr. Nan Hung, Director Mo, is right there. You should have heard what he said earlier, and Shuyan emphasized. Nan Hung removed the cigarette from his mouth, coldly narrowing his eyes. I've been friends with Mo Jingshin for many years, but I have nothing to do with Shine Group. Director Mo should know my temper. I'm afraid unrelated people won't be able to enter my place. As he spoke, Nan Hung coldly glanced in Mo Xiaoza's direction with a faint smile. When Mo Xiaoza heard these words, his expression was clearly unhappy. My own son is hospitalized here. As his father, do I have to be stopped by you when I want to visit? If Director Mo wishes to enter, of course, I won't stop you. Nan Hung's tone was unhurried and indifferent. But I'm afraid it's inappropriate for Miss and to enter. Mrs. Mo is still here watching. To let Missin in, Director Mo, are you sure you're not joking? Mo Xiaoza coldly furrowed his brows, and Shuyan walked away from the door and turned back. She looked at Jin Wan and handed the things in her hands to her. Mrs. Mo, sorry for the trouble. Jin Wan's lips curved up slightly. She received it. I thank Secretarian on Jing Shen's behalf. Speaking up to here, Jin Wan paused for a moment before saying, I'll continue to call you Secretarian, right? Right now, you're the secretarial manager of Shine Group. Compared to when you were in the MO Corporation, your position is much higher. To be able to walk so smoothly in the workplace, it can be seen that Secretarian's workability is indeed recognized. And Shuyan politely nodded at her. The smile in her eyes was neither heavy nor faint. You can call me by my name or Secretarian. Jin Wan exchanged a look with her. A woman's intuition had always been accurate. She thoughtfully watched Shuyan for a few seconds before handing the things in her hands to Feng Ling, who had already reached out. Dad, are you going in to see Jingshin now? Jin Wan asked. Although it was not Mo Xiaoza who was shut out earlier, Nan Hung clearly did not give him any face by shutting Shuyan out. Mo Xiaoza's expression was cold as he glanced in the direction of the ward. After a moment of silence, he said, Since Jing Shun is still resting, I won't go in. In another half a month, it will be the Chinese New Year. If he could be discharged by then, he can go home for a reunion dinner. Jin Wan nodded. All right, I'll tell him. Mo Xiaoza took another look at her and was about to leave with a sullen face when he suddenly paused and turned to look at Shuyan beside him. Help her when you're not busy in the hospital. Jin Wan is not familiar with Los Angeles. She may need your help. All right, and Shuyan said softly. Mo Xiaoza sighed from an angle that Jin Wan couldn't see and entered the elevator. After they left, Jin Wan looked at the door of the elevator and stared at the number that dropped from the top floor to the bottom floor. No matter what, Mo Xiaoza was Mo Jingshin's biological father. Even if Shuyan could not enter, he could enter if he wanted to. However, Mo Xiaoza clearly had a temper. Or perhaps his desire to control others was too strong. Anything that was out of his control could anger him. He came in a hurry and left in a hurry. There was not the slightest bit of father-son affection between them. If Mo Jingshin could be discharged in another half a month, was there really a need to go back? And just now, for a moment, Jinwan felt, and Shuyan was no longer as proactive as when she first went to High City and the Mo Corporation. On the contrary, although Shuyan did not explicitly say or do anything, she gave people the feeling that she was just accepting Mo Xiao's arrangements and did not take the initiative or resist. "Mrs. Mo, should I send these in?" Feng Ling checked the fruit basket and nutrition products she had just received and asked after making sure there were no problems. Jean Wan's gaze moved away from the number 1 on the elevator and glanced at the things in the fruit basket. She could tell at a glance that these things were not bought by Mo Xiaoza. Given Mo Xiaoza's character, he probably wouldn't buy anything when he came to visit his son. The fruit was very exquisite. It was not the kind of fruit that could be bought casually in the supermarket near the hospital. It was a fruit that was usually very rare and had high nutritional content. Even the nutritional products were mostly good things that could enrich the blood. It could be seen that Shuyan had done her homework before coming. This Shuyan should have been very sober when she left High City, right? Then why had she acted as if everything had been arranged by Mo Xiaoza? Why had she acted as if she was innocent? In the following week, it was clear that many people who thought they could make a profit here were mercilessly shut out. Thus, this week, the hospital was especially quiet. No one dared to rashly come and disturb them. The last time Mo Jingshin's wound was inflamed, he only had a fever for one night. After that, his recovery was not bad. A week later, the skin on the surface of his wound had begun to heal, and he could occasionally get off the bed and walk normally. The last time Dad asked you to go back for dinner after being discharged next week. Do you have any plans? Jean Wan supported him as they walked around the ward. When they came to the window, she turned to open the curtains and then closed the window that had been slightly open earlier. I don't have any plans. Akib's matter has been settled. Officer Ince and the people from the base will take care of everything on their own. I don't plan to stay in America for too long. After I recover, I'll bring you back to High City as soon as possible. Mo Jingshin looked at Jean Wan's meticulous manner and smiled. Next week is the Spring Festival in China. No matter where in the country, it's basically the Spring Festival holiday state. The Mo Corporation doesn't have too much work for you to handle personally. It's actually quite good to accompany your parents for a reunion dinner, but you accompany grandfather every year. If you don't go back to accompany him this year, won't grandfather be angry? The moment Elder Mo was mentioned, Jean Wan couldn't help smiling. The winter sun shone in through the window, landing on Mo Jingshin's elegant and deep brows. It was as though the man who was smiling warmly was surrounded by a circle of light. He said mildly, "He won't be angry. Although we aren't in the Mo residence, there are many relatives who come and go. It's not like you don't know how many people visit every day. Dealing with those relatives is enough to keep him busy." As he spoke, Jean Wan reached out to his back and gently scratched it through the hospital gown. She then asked with bright eyes, "Shouldn't the healing period be very itchy? Don't you feel even the slightest itch?" Mo Jingshin chuckled softly. "It wasn't itchy at first, but after you scratched it, it did feel a little." At the same time, he bent down slightly to look at her fair and clean face. His gaze met hers, and he said meaningfully, "What's more itchy is my heart." Jean Wan. Chapter 338. Ever since she became pregnant, Mo Jingshin had changed from teasing her physically to teasing her verbally. Jean Wan was already used to it. Mo Jingshin could only lie on the bed, and she would glare at him even if he moved his arm. Now that he could finally walk and hold her, the man's arms around her waist gradually tightened, as though he was going to imprison her in his arms and never let her go. Both of them were wearing hospital gowns. Because Jean Wan was too thin, her clothes appeared particularly loose. The man only gently tugged at them, and the 2 buttons on her chest were directly undone. Being held in the man's arms like this couldn't be more convenient. Jean Wan tilted her head. "I'm less than 2 months pregnant," he replied vaguely. "And I know." A few days ago, when I went for a checkup, the doctor said that it was too early to see clearly. I'll go for a checkup when I have time in the next few days. I didn't know that a prenatal checkup would be so troublesome. The man's kiss spread to her collarbone and then moved back to her neck and finally fell on her lips. He pressed her against the wall by the window. Although he held her tightly, he avoided her stomach and pried open her lips and teeth to invade. They kissed for a long time. Ji-Wan didn't struggle. Anyway, Mo Jingshan knew better than her. Sure enough, as they kissed, they forgot about each other. When they were ready, the man pressed against her, and the two of them stood against the wall. He leaned against her neck, panting, and his husky voice was almost against her ear. There's still 1.5 months to go. It's uncomfortable. Ji-Wan wanted to laugh. She held it in for a long time and finally laughed. She raised her hand to hug the man who seemed to be acting coquettishly. Anyway, she defined Mo Jingshan's words of uncomfortable as acting coquettishly. She smiled and held his neck. Grandpa, didn't you want us to have a football team? You have to bear with it sooner or later. After you give birth to one, who knows when you'll have to give birth to a second one? You get used to it. The man suddenly pinched her chin and kissed her again. Then he kissed her cheek and moved to her ear to coax her. One is enough. Do you think I don't know that you go back to your ward every morning to secretly vomit behind my back? Just one is already so difficult to endure. How can I bear to let you suffer this kind of suffering again? Ji-Wan found that Mo Jingshan's appearance really gave people the impression that he was a man of few desires. However, when she really got to know him better, she realized that this man always had the ability to make people drown in his kisses. If she wasn't pregnant now, when he could finally move, he would probably kiss her and throw her onto the bed at any time. When she went for another prenatal checkup, the results this time were not very different from the previous one. It still looked good, but compared with ordinary pregnant women, the fetus was not very stable. This had something to do with Ji-Wan's cold womb and her experience in the past 20 days and her poor sleep every day. She slept well in Mo Jingshan's ward, but every day she was always worried about his wound, and she was always in a bad mood. Occasionally, she would have nightmares in which Dolly pointed a gun at her. Due to all these factors, the little thing in her stomach was not very stable. It was slightly smaller than normal. The doctor reminded Ji-Wan to eat more, get more nutrition, rest more, and stay calm. She did not need to worry too much. So in the last few days of Mo Jingshan's stay in the hospital, Ji-Wan didn't sleep in his ward under the doctor's advice, but obediently recuperated in her own ward. This time, Mo Jingshan could walk around at will, but she could only lie in bed and watch this man's ambiguous expression when he came to visit him from time to time. It was really, the tables had turned. There were so many Chinese in Los Angeles that the Spring Festival in China could be felt in the major shopping malls and streets here. On the day before New Year's Eve, Mo Jingshan could finally be discharged from the hospital. When he walked out of the hospital, Shine Group's car was already waiting outside. In other words, Mo Xiaoza didn't intend to give them any room to choose. Since they had returned to Los Angeles, they naturally had to listen to his arrangements. A middle-aged driver came out of the car and nodded respectfully to Mo Jingshan. CEO Mo, long time no see. Are you feeling better? Chairman Mo asked us to pick you up. The driver was a Chinese man in his 40s named George. He had been a butler and driver for the Mo family in Los Angeles for many years and was very familiar with Mo Jingshan. Mo Jingshan glanced at him indifferently. Did I say I would go back today? George paused and explained, but tomorrow is the Spring Festival in China. Chairman Mo learned that you were discharged today, so he specially sent us to pick you up, and Nan Hung was not here today. Feng Ling, Kay, and the others are going to send them to Mo Jingshan's residence in Los Angeles. But now the Mo family came to pick them up. They didn't say anything and were about to move Ji-Wan and Mo Jingshan's things to the car. Mo Jingshan said, "Put them down." Feng Ling and Kay paused, took down the luggage that was about to be put in the car, and turned to look at Mo Jingshan, waiting for his instructions. "Put them in our car." Mo Jingshan was expressionless and took a look at George. "If there's time, I'll go back tomorrow. You can go." George had been in the Mo family for many years and certainly knew the relationship between Mo Jingshin and the Mo family. He didn't say anything, nodded, and returned to the car. After waiting for a moment, seeing that Mo Jingshin really didn't want to get in the car, he had to drive back to Shine Group. There were 2 cars parked in front of the hospital. The black Bentley appeared on the busy street of Los Angeles at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, followed by a car belonging to Feng Ling and the others. It wasn't until 6 o'clock that they arrived at 11 Base. The winter day was too short and the sky was already dark. Jinwon didn't expect that she could visit the base as soon as she was discharged from the hospital. When Mo Jingshan arrived, Nanheng was talking with someone inside. When he came out, he didn't look as casual as usual. He took a solemn look at Jinwon and Feng Ling and then went in with Mo Jingshan to have a private chat. This was a very private place in 11 Base. Jinwon didn't go in, but let Feng Ling and Kay take her to other places. After visiting the shooting range and some close combat training areas, Jinwon looked at the few young men who were still training in such cold weather and turned to look at Feng Ling, who was always dressed in black. Did you used to be like this every day? Chapter 339. Mrs. Mo, don't be fooled by Feng Ling's thin body. Every time we train, she is better than us, and when we fight, she is always the first one. In terms of close combat, 80% of the people in our base can't beat her, and the remaining 20% can only beat her if they have a chance. She is very fierce, Kate said as he put his hand on Feng Ling's shoulder boldly, as if he were getting along with a brother. Feng Ling didn't avoid him, but said coldly, I refuse to be flattered. Kay smiled. What's wrong? Are you afraid that Mrs. Mo will raise your salary when she finds out your status in our base? Alas, it's not that Mrs. Mo can't afford it. Get lost. Feng Ling raised her hand and slapped him away. I'll walk here with her for a while. Why are you always following her? I don't think you can have a private conversation with Mrs. Mo. Last time, you were so embarrassed that you almost smashed my cell phone. Before Kay finished speaking, before Feng Ling raised her foot to kick him, he nimbly dodged and ran away. Jinwon stood on the side of the training ground with a smile, glanced at Kay's back as he ran away, and then turned to look at the people who were training inside. She touched the metal railing next to her with both hands, and the cold touch made her feel that everything was real. Just like in Cambodia, in such a heavy training base, it seemed that everyone had a gun on their waist, and from time to time, she could hear the rhythmic sound of gunfire coming from the shooting range. You can't enter this kind of place easily, can you? Jinwon asked. Feng Ling stood next to her, looking in the same direction as her, and answered lightly. And Jinwon turned to look at her. Then how did you get in? I happened to save a person from their base and was introduced by him, but I was too small when I was a teenager. I was a woman, but I had to pretend to be a man, so I looked even thinner and smaller in a group of newcomers. At that time, Nanheng was very averse to me and didn't think highly of me. He tried many ways to force me to leave, forcing me to undergo the most intense training and tests. It almost cost me half my life, but I still refused to leave. Maybe I do have talent and explosive power in this aspect. I'm small, but I'm strong, and I can bear hardships. Later, I changed from the little thing he didn't think highly of to the person he occasionally had to get up in the middle of the night to train with me. Jinwon leaned against the metal railing and looked at her. Nanheng's nature should be very cold and difficult to get along with. It's hard for him to change his opinion of someone he doesn't think highly of. Just like before, I felt that he didn't like me. If it weren't for Mo Jingshan, he might not even have bothered to say a few words to me. It's really not easy for you to change his opinion of such a stubborn man. He's that kind of person. He's ruthless, but you have to be more ruthless than him. Feng Ling raised her chin and pointed to several people who were training in close combat. When I was 17, my body was basically developed. At that time, the clothes I wore were especially loose. When I was training with them, I was afraid that they would find out my true gender, so there was a period of time I didn't dare to move. Nanheng fought with me several times and found that I had strangely become timid, so he directly beat me to the ground. At that time, The weather was especially cold. He told me to lie here for an hour and not to get up. If I dared to get up, he would kick me once. So ruthless. I didn't get up at that time. I lay there for the whole night, thinking of all kinds of ways to hide my chest and figure. And in the end, I fainted from the cold. And then, there was no then. When I woke up, Kay and the others sent me to the infirmary. I woke up quickly and opened my eyes as soon as I reached the infirmary. Afraid that they would find out that my body was different, I pushed them away and ran back to my room alone. I took a hot shower, but I still caught a cold. I had a high fever for 2 days and slept alone for 2 days. Then I recovered. Maybe it's because I'm young that I don't care how my body is tortured. From her words, it was clear that she meant that Nan Hung did not come to visit her at all. She said it so lightly, but a young girl in her teens already had such a strong endurance. Even now, when she mentioned these things, she did not seem to feel any pain or grievance. Hearing this, Jean Wan felt an inexplicable surge of emotions surging in her heart. Phongling, can you teach me how to shoot? Why do you suddenly want to learn how to shoot? Last time in Cambodia, I fired that shot. If you hadn't come in time, I probably would have shot myself again. Who knows what will happen in the future? Anyway, I could train here now. Can you teach me? Who said that only men had a hero complex? Women also had it. No one wanted to be the one who held others back when they were in danger. It was always good to have a skill. Fong Ling wanted to say that it was better to teach her some simple self-defense skills than to shoot, but when she was about to speak, she remembered that Jean Wan was pregnant and couldn't learn these things that required extreme movements for the time being. Then teach me, but I feel that even if you learn it, you won't be able to use it in the future. Let's talk about whether I can use it or not. The main thing is that you are too handsome. I want to be as handsome as you. In the evening, the training time on the shooting range had just ended, and then there was a gunshot. When an important guest in the base's conference room heard the gunshot, he calmly commented, "This sounds like a newcomer." Nan Hung glanced at the time and then exchanged a look with Mo Jingshin, who was sitting on the other side. He then stood up and looked at the situation on the shooting range through the base's surveillance cameras. He saw that Fong Ling and Jean Wan were each holding a gun. Fong Ling taught Jean Wan how to hold a gun, and Jean Wan imitated her. Fong Ling fired a shot and hit the bullseye. Jean Wan also fired a shot. Fortunately, the bullet didn't fly out, but it only hit the third ring. Seeing the accuracy of this woman's shooting, Nan Hung recalled the shot that Jean Wan had fired in the nick of time in Cambodia. He narrowed his eyes and sneered, turning to say, "Your woman is learning how to shoot from Fong Ling. It seems that the promise you made to Elder Mo to not stain your hands with blood will be taken over by your wife. Is it because she was stimulated last time and wants to learn some skills so that she can fight with us in the future?" Chapter 340. Nan Hung raised his brows. Not necessarily. A person's potential is limitless. Previously in Cambodia, it was enough to prove that sometimes the most unexpected people can become the key to victory. Furthermore, no matter how good Jean Wan's marksmanship was, she clearly wanted to protect her man's heart. And Mo Jingshun, who had mostly recovered, revealed a hint of a smile on his lips. Between the two of them, one was here, and the other was slowly learning how to shoot at the shooting range. Even from such a distance, she could still forcefully feed him a mouthful of dog food. Nan Heng's lips twitched. He moved away from the monitor screen to allow Mo Jingshin to continue admiring his wife's back view. The sky gradually darkened. The base was surrounded by bright lights, especially the shooting range. The lights here seemed to be brighter than the other training grounds. Even though the wind was bone-chilling, Jean Wan was still in the mood to play. She fired at a target 50 meters away. Reality proved that she really could not hit a target more than 100 meters away. However, within 50 meters, she could basically hit a 5-ring target. Initially, Fong Ling stood by her side to teach her all the movements. Now, it was Jean Wan who stood by her side to train her aim. Fong Ling would occasionally speak up to guide her on which positions were not standard. Just like that, she trained for more than half an hour. In the cold wind, Jean Wan was covered in sweat. She moved to the side over 10 steps, planning to challenge the target 100 meters away again. Pong! It tilted again. Jean Wan pursed her lips. As she loaded the gun, she said, Feng Ling, your marksmanship is so good. How many years did you practice? Do you need to practice for this 100 meters for a long time? I feel like the wind speed will also affect the direction of the shot. No one behind her answered her. Jean Wan raised the gun and continued to aim at the target 100 meters away, planning to shoot again. All of a sudden, she felt a warmth on the back of her hand. Just as she was about to shoot, she paused. Without turning back, she knew it was Mo Jingshan. The man's clean and refreshing scent surrounded her. He didn't say anything and only stood behind her, holding her waist and straightening her posture. He held her fingers with his other hand and said in a low and hoarse voice by her ear, Try it now. Jean Wan felt that her hand did not seem to be much different from before. However, it seemed like a certain angle that she had not been able to control had been corrected. She calmly aimed at the target 100 meters away and forcefully hooked her fingers. Bang! Bullseye! Looking at the bullseye that was shot through, Jean Wan, back then in Cambodia, she had repeatedly feared that something would happen to Mo Jingshan. In the end, it turned out that he had never intended to shoot. Jean Wan turned back to look at the man behind her. The cold wind blew past. Mo Jingshan opened the black cashmere coat she had bought, held her in his arms, and wrapped her in the coat. At the same time, he took the gun from her hand and threw it to Feng Ling. Feng Ling raised her hand to catch the gun, looked at Jean Wan with a smile, and walked away. You've been standing here practicing for so long. Aren't you cold? The man's low voice was close to her ear. It's not cold. It's quite exciting. Jean Wan smiled honestly. Because of her poor marksmanship, her smile was a little shy, and a dimple appeared on her lips. She didn't feel cold, but now that she was wrapped in a man's clothes, she turned around his arms and put her arms around his back. Aren't you talking to Nanhung inside? Are you done? It's nothing important. I'm meeting an old friend. Mo Jingshan kissed her forehead. You could just play around with shooting here. There's no need to specially learn. In the future, there won't be any opportunities for you to shoot. I just suddenly feel that Feng Ling is especially handsome. I feel that a woman's handsome side is especially charming, so I wanted to learn from her. The man watched her with his dark, calm eyes and gradually chuckled lowly. You're already very charming right now. Do you want to be more charming? I'm already restraining myself. Are you planning to make me accompany you in bed every night until the day we die? Jean Wan, the next day at noon, Mo Jingshan drove the black Bentley directly to the Mo family's manor in Los Angeles. Although this place didn't occupy as much land as the Mo family's old mansion in High City, it was still more than 1,000 meters long. Moreover, in Los Angeles, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, and it was in a prosperous, wealthy area, it could be seen that Shine Group had indeed stood tall in the American Chinese community for many years. After all, it was said that this manor in the wealthy area had been built for many years. Those who could live here were not ordinary people. As soon as she got out of the car, Jean Wan found that there were 2 luxury cars parked in the parking lot. She asked in confusion, Does the Mo family have many relatives in Los Angeles? Is there a relative here today? Mo Jingshan glanced at it. No. Then why are there so many cars? Someone must have driven it here. If it's only the Mo family's cars, shouldn't they be parked in the garage? Jean Wan glanced inside again. At this time, the housekeeper George, who used to work as a driver, came out to welcome them. CEO Mo, Mrs. Mo, welcome back. It's just the right time. Dinner is about to start. Mo Jingshan nodded lightly and did not say much. Jean Wan called him Uncle George. As she was about to walk in, Jean Wan was suddenly held by the man's hand. She was forced to stop and turn to look at Mo Jingshan. She was about to ask him what he was doing, but because of his gaze, she subconsciously turned her head to look inside. Mo Jingshan looked ahead, coldly watching Su Jilan, who had just walked out of the door of the villa, and the man's aura instantly reached a new height. A few days ago, Mo Jingshan was sickly, pale, and weak, but now he was as cold and grim, exuding a silent and chilling aura of alienation. Jean Wan had thought of countless possibilities. She had thought that the person she would meet here was in Shuyan. After all, Mo Xiaoza intended to play matchmaker with his most capable secretary, but she never expected that it would be Su Zhilan. Since Su Zhilan was here, Jin Wan glanced at the villa. Then the Su family should be here too. No wonder there were so many cars in the parking lot. She turned to see a gray-haired old man through the window of the villa. In the Mo family, except for grandfather Mo, there was no other old man of this age, so she guessed that this should be the legendary Elder Su. Did he hear that they would come back for the reunion dinner after failing to enter the hospital to see Mo Jingshan? So he came to the Mo family to wait? Jin Wan's good mood suddenly exploded. Chapter 341. Mo Jingshan's expression was cold and handsome. He held Jin Wan's hand and turned to leave, not intending to stay a moment longer. Jin Wan had just been pulled a few steps when Mo Xiaoza's cold voice rang. You just came back and you're leaving? Mo Xiaoza didn't expect that Mo Jingshan would pull Jin Wan away without any reaction. Jin Wan paused because of Mo Xiaoza's voice. After all, as a daughter-in-law, it was not good for her to be too arrogant. Mo Jingshan didn't let go of her hand. He brought her to his side, put his palm on her back, and forcibly led her out of the Mo family's simple black European-style door. He said calmly and coldly, "Ignore them. Let's go." With that, he strode out with Jin Wan. At this time, Elder Su heard the noise and had already come out. He looked at the door. Although he was old, his eyes were bright and full of spirit. The reason she came here today was indeed because of Mo Jingshan. Before coming here, he had doubted whether Mo Jingshan would come back, but today was the Spring Festival in China, and he was in Los Angeles. He couldn't just pass by his house 3 times without entering, so he came here to take a gamble. But Mo Jingshan's attitude said it all. At this moment, Su Zhilan stood there, watching the two of them who were almost far away. She might have thought it was not difficult at first, but after facing the ruthless and unconquerable Mo Jingshan in the hospital, and seeing the two of them who didn't even look back, she suddenly felt that everything was too unreal. Jin Wan was wearing a white cashmere coat, which made a couple with Mo Jingshan's black coat. From their backs, the man was tall and straight, and the woman's slender figure was perfect. Standing together, they were indeed a perfect match. Jin Wan's long, curly, fluffy hair fell from her shoulders and scattered on her back. The ends of her hair were covered by the man's palm when he pressed against her back. They stood so intimately and dazzlingly. Su Zhilan hid the reluctance and depression in her eyes. She looked up and saw that Jin Wan seemed to be thinking about something and hesitated, but the man firmly pulled her away. Jingshan, Mo Xiaoza said angrily to their backs, "Are you going to make us feel upset during the Spring Festival? Why are you leaving now that you're back? Come here right now." Mo Xiaoza had just finished speaking when a female voice rang out. "Jingshan is back. Where is it? Did he bring my daughter-in-law over?" Hearing this voice, Mo Jingshan's footsteps slowed slightly. Jin Wan subconsciously turned her eyes to see a well-maintained middle-aged woman looking out the door eagerly. Jin Wan had some impression of her, because when she and Mo Jingshan got married, Mo Xiaoza didn't attend at all, but Mo Jingshan's mother took the time to fly all the way back to High City from the United States to attend their wedding. Although they had only met once, Jin Wan recognized that this was Mo Jingshan's mother, Ms. Wan Zhu. Wan Zhu saw them at a glance, and when her eyes met Jin Wan's, she smiled kindly and waved at Jin Wan. "Daughter-in-law, why are you leaving? Come back. We've made a lot of good food just waiting for you." On the day of their wedding, Ms. Wan Zhu took Jin Wan's hand and called her daughter-in-law several times. At that time, Jin Wan was very resistant and pulled her hand out. Regardless of whether she was being polite or not, she turned to the backstage of the bride's makeup shop. At the thought of this, she felt a pang of guilt in her heart. She immediately turned around decisively, took Mo Jingshan's arm hard, and led him back. After returning to the yard of the manor, Jin Wan said with a smile, "Just now, Jingshan said he came back in a hurry and didn't buy any gifts for the Spring Festival. He was going to take me to buy gifts with him. We didn't say we were leaving." Mo Jingshun raised his eyebrows and glanced sideways at the little woman who actually spoke up for him. Hearing this, Wanju came out with a smile and took Jin Wan's hand. "Oh, your hand is so cold. We're going back to our own home, not to a guest. Why did you buy gifts? Besides, Jingshun, if you want to buy something, go by yourself. It's so cold. Let Jin Wan go home to warm up." With that, she took Jin Wan inside. The difference in attitude between the mother-in-law and the father-in-law was really too big. Mo Xiaoza still stood in front of the door with a dark expression. When Mo Jingshun saw that Jin Wan had been obediently dragged into the door, he nodded indifferently to Elder Su, who was standing in front of the door. Elder Su smiled lightly. "It seems that Jingshin doesn't welcome us." Mo Jingshin's cold and clear eyes swept over Elder Su. He said indifferently, "Elder Su, you worry too much. After all, you're a guest. How can I not welcome you?" At this time, Su Jilan stared at Mo Jingshin's face and smiled at him. "Jingshun, I grew up with my grandfather. There are too few people in the Su family, and this year's New Year is particularly lonely, so I came here to spend the Spring Festival with Uncle Mo and Auntie Zhu. I didn't expect you would really come back." Mo Jingshin nodded indifferently. "Okay, then please have a seat." With that, without saying anything more, he picked up the electronic car key, locked the car on the parking lot, and walked in. At this time, Jin Wan had been pulled into the living room by Mo Jingshin's mother. The decoration style of the Mo family in the United States was different from that of the Mo family in High City. In High City, the decoration style was simple and spacious, with green mountains and clear waters suitable for health, while the Mo family's decoration style was quite exquisite. It was obvious that Mo Jingshin's mother was in charge of everything in the family. Mo Xiaoza, a middle-aged man suffering from male chauvinism, might not even touch a vase in the family. "I heard that you were all in the hospital a few days ago. Are you all right? Is Jingshin better?" Wanju asked the servants to bring fruit and tea while looking at Jin Wan with a smile, as if she were looking at her own daughter-in-law. Having been treated coldly by Mo Xiaoza for a long time, Jin Wan was not used to the enthusiasm of Mo Jingshin's mother. She was pulled to sit on the sofa and didn't take off her coat, so she hurriedly nodded. "It's all right. Dad went to the hospital to visit him a few days ago. He was resting at that time, so he didn't see him, but Jingshin has always been in good health." Chapter 342. Jin Wan sat here, exchanging pleasantries with Mo Jingshin's mother. When Mo Jingshin entered the door, he saw Jin Wan's spoiled expression. The living room was very hot. Not far away, there was a common Western fireplace on the wall, facing her. The little woman seemed to have forgotten to take off her coat. At this moment, not knowing whether it was because of embarrassment or the heat, her face was faintly red. Mo Jingshin raised his eyebrows slightly, and his eyes revealed a slight smile. "If you don't take off your coat, I'll roast you for New Year's Eve dinner." Wanju came to herself and looked at Jin Wan with a smile. "Girl, why didn't you take off your coat when you came in? It's 27 degrees in this room. It's so hot. Give me your coat, and I'll ask someone to hang it up for you." Jin Wan hurriedly took off her coat, handed it to the servant who came over, and nodded to the servant to thank her. Mrs. Wanju seemed to find that Jin Wan was very different from when she first got married. She smiled. "The last time I saw you was at your wedding with Jingshin. You were actually very shy of strangers at that time, weren't you? Now it seems that the relationship between you two is getting better and better, and you're no longer so distant to me. I was a little shy that day and wasn't very polite. Please don't mind." Jin Wan was a little embarrassed because of this. I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. When I was young and just got married, I was also very disgusted with the relatives of the Mo family. I didn't know any of them, but every one of them had to greet me. I was very annoyed, but I still had to keep smiling. I know this feeling too well. After a while, I'll get used to it." Wanju said as she turned to look at Mo Jingshin. "Jingshin, are you really not badly hurt? I heard you were in the hospital for a long time." "I'm fine now." Mo Jingshin was gentle to his mother. His tone was gentle, which was completely different from the coldness he showed to Mo Xiaoza. "That's good. You haven't been back for a long time. Since you brought Wan back this time, why don't you stay at home for a few days? Anyway, everyone in China is on vacation. If there's nothing urgent, don't rush back. I'll see. It was rare that Mo Jingshan did not directly reject her. At this time, Elder Su and Su Jilan entered the door with Mo Shaoza. Seeing that Jin Wan was chatting with Mo Jingshan's mother, Elder Su said with a smile, "The news of Jingshan's marriage is really sudden. I didn't know it at all. I didn't expect that I would be so lucky to meet Mrs. Mo this year." Jin Wan heard the voice and turned around. She stood up and politely nodded at Elder Su. "Hello." Elder Su nodded at her with a smile. Although he was smiling, his eyes were obviously not smiling. After looking at her for a while, he turned to talk to Mo Shaoza. Jin Wan's eyes met Su Jilan's, but Su Jilan looked away thoughtfully. Jin Wan, who was being called daughter-in-law by Mo Jingshan's mother, obviously did not intend to look directly at her. When Jin Wan sat down again, Mo Jingshan had put down his coat. He hadn't been back to the company for a while, so there was no need to wear the identity of CEO Mo all the time. He was tall and straight, and the paleness and weakness he had shown in the hospital a few days ago had faded away. At this time, he was only wearing a white sweater and straight trousers wrapped his slender legs neatly. He was dressed fashionably and stood out in this Western-style villa that did not have much spring festival atmosphere. He sat on the sofa on the same side as Jin Wan, somewhat lazily. When he heard Wan Zhu asking about Jin Wan, he smiled and looked at them silently. Mo Jingshan hadn't been back for many years. Even the servants who had watched him grow up didn't know whether to call him Young Master Mo or CEO Mo like everyone else. An older servant seemed particularly happy to see him back. She came up to him and stuffed a freshly washed red apple into his hand. With one look, he knew that the other party must have watched him grow up. Mo Jingshan did not refuse. He sat there, holding a red apple in his hand. His fingers were long and slender, with distinct joints. Perhaps because he had stayed in the hospital for a long time and had not been exposed to the sun for a long time, his skin was fairer than before. The difference between his fair skin and the red of the apple was obvious. He smiled mildly and casually asked the old helper a few questions. It seemed like only in front of his mother and the Mo family's old helpers would Mo Jingshan put on a different kind of temperament. He was as warm as jade, amiable, and much warmer than his usual attitude toward people. Afterward, Elder Su and the others were invited by Mo Shaoza to sit opposite them and chat. When they talked about the reason for their marriage, Mo Jingshan's expression was as usual. His gaze swept across their faces one by one. Today is the Chinese New Year. It's a day for family reunions. It doesn't seem like we should talk about my marriage. Su Jilan then said, "Yes, it's also the first time that Jin Wan has come to the Mo family. She should not be very familiar with the inside and outside of the house. Grandpa, if you talk to Uncle Mo like this, she will feel uncomfortable." "I'm fine," Jin Wan said. "After all, this is our home. Why should I feel uncomfortable?" The smile on Su Jilan's face disappeared. She paused and then said, "That's good. I can see that Annie Zhu is very warm to you, as if she is afraid that you will not be used to it. I was going to let Annie Zhu do her work first, and I'll accompany you to walk around the Mo family." With that, Su Jilan chuckled again, as if she did not see Jin Wan's indifferent expression and perfunctory attitude. She said with a smile, "The Mo family in the United States should be very different from the Mo family in High City, right? There are several Roman statues collected by Uncle Mo in the 1980s. Every time I see them, I'm amazed. Miss G, would you like to have a look? I'll show you the way." Jin Wan smiled lightly. "I don't know much about Roman statues. Since Dad specially collects these, he must be an expert. As a layman, I'd better not make a fool of myself. It'll be embarrassing if I pretend to know something. Miss G, I just see that you don't seem to be used to the atmosphere and environment of the Mo family, so I want to take you out for a walk." Su Jilan smiled and said, "It's just a tour. What does it have to do with whether I'm an expert or not? Wan, if you don't like it, you don't have to go to the back to see those things. Those are the things that Jingshan's father collected more than a decade ago. I usually don't bother to ask people to clean them up. Mrs. Wanju said at this time. Nuan will stay here for the next 2 days. You have a lot of time to walk around at home. Now that you've just come back, sit for a while and have a good rest. There's no hurry. Chapter 343. Hearing this, Wanju's expression softened. Without waiting for Jinwan to speak, she turned to Su Zhilan, saying, Nuan has been very reserved since she got married. She's so slow to warm up. It's rare for me to see her here. Don't scare my daughter-in-law. What if she doesn't dare to talk to me again? Su Zhilan's expression froze slightly, and she smiled apologetically. Annie Zhu, I was just saying. Mo Jingshun sat on the sofa on the same side as Jinwan's mother. His eyes were cold, and he smiled without speaking. Jinwan could see that Mo Jingshun's mother was obviously the same kind of person as grandfather Mo. She would definitely protect her own daughter-in-law. In this way, Mo Xiaoze was really a weirdo in this family. But it was no wonder that Mo Xiaoze, a powerful and cold-tempered man, hadn't been able to kick Jinwan out of the Mo family. After all, the one who slept with him and his own father were on Jinwan's side. He couldn't bear to have his wife give him gentle pillow talk every day. As for Su Zhilan, she was obviously too confident today. Not to mention which side Mo Jingshun's mother was on, Mo Xiaoze really liked the Yin family, not the Su family that he had cooperated with a few years ago. The engagement between the Su family and the Mo family didn't last long. Jinwan didn't know what kind of relationship the two families had, but from the way they sat and talked to each other, it was clear that they were mostly polite. At this time, Elder Su said, Jingshun, you can't blame Zhilan for being so concerned about your family. After all, your marriage is such a big deal. It doesn't matter if other people don't mind, but how can Zhilan not mind? She was once part of your life plan, but now you've excluded her. Miss G is now your wife, so it's not an exaggeration for the Mo family to treat her so passionately. Zhilan only said a few words of concern. There's no need to treat her so coldly. I only have one granddaughter, Zhilan. After a brief pause, Elder Su said in a meaningful tone, I'm already old, and I don't really understand the emotional issues between young people, so I can't get involved. I only have one granddaughter, Zhilan. Her parents were in the capital of a war-torn country when they drove past a bomb-filled road after discussing business. Not even a complete corpse could be found. I personally raised this granddaughter of mine. You can say that I'm biased or spoiling her, but you broke off the engagement just like that and returned to High City to marry another woman. Don't you think you should give the Su family an explanation for this? The window paper that had not been broken was instantly broken by Elder Su. Mo Xiaoze frowned deeply, and Wanju, who was sitting by Jinwan's side, fell silent when Elder Su mentioned Su Zhilan's parents. Mo Jingshun smiled and looked at Su Zhilan with a faint smile. Miss Su, do you need me to repeat the reason for the cancellation of the engagement in public? Su Zhilan knew that she was in the wrong when she cooperated with Mo Xiaoze and lied that she had saved him. But now Mo Jingshun had put on the table. If she didn't stop him at this time, she and her grandfather would be humiliated, and she wouldn't be able to force Jinwan to leave. I understand the reason. Su Zhilan said with an understanding expression, I can understand why Jingshun left the United States, and I don't want to force him to be too responsible for me. Since he loves someone else and doesn't even mention the engagement, I can only wish Miss G and Jingshun a happy marriage. Mo Jingshun didn't hesitate at all. He said flatly and coldly, there was indeed an engagement between Miss Su and me. As for the so-called love and responsibility you mentioned, it's just a question of the benevolent and the wise. Jinwan is my wife. She didn't interfere in any of my relationships, so there's no need for anyone to point fingers and talk about our engagement. I don't need to explain the truth in detail. Miss Su and Elder Su should understand it. Even if it's for the sake of the past, you shouldn't be so heartless to Zhilan. If it were a few years ago, Elder Su could still stand up and point at Mo Jingshun's face and scold him as an elder, but now he could only complain with an ugly face. Elder Su, do you mean that after I get married, I still have to care about my ex and take her feelings as my responsibility? Mo Jingshin's tone was as cold as frost, but the sneer in his eyes was obvious. Jingshin, we're guests at the Mo family today. We're just talking about the past. After all, Jilan has waited for you for so many years. She spent her best years waiting for you. As her grandfather, it's not too much for me to ask for an explanation for her. Seeing Mo Jingshin's cold attitude, Elder Su finally expressed his dissatisfaction. Hearing this, Jinwan suddenly said, "Miss Su, how old are you? 24? The people in the living room suddenly fell completely silent, and almost everyone's eyes fell on her. Jinwan didn't have any intention of backing down. She even faced everyone's different gazes and looked at Su Jilan with clear eyes. 24 years old is considered a good time? Isn't the golden age for women between 20 and 35 years old? Almost everyone in their teens has the experience of losing the person they love. If everyone holds the person they love in their teens accountable like this, then there will be too many people in debt in this world." Elder Su's eyes darkened. "Miss G, are you clear about what happened between Jingshin and Jilan? Back then, Jilan almost married him." Jinwan smiled lightly and said unhurriedly, "With your experience, Elder Su, I don't think you need me to explain to you how much this so-called almost is. There's no turning back in life. It's fine that you like to reminisce when you're old, but Miss Su, you're still young, and you're always clinging to what you didn't get in the past. What's the point of that? Are you going to ask me, your legal wife, to back out of the marriage just because you're not reconciled to the fact that you're a little bit short, and then ask her to make up for it?" The air was filled with silence and embarrassment. Of course, it wasn't Jinwan who was embarrassed. She was clearly saying that Su Jilan relied on Elder Su's support and even said that it was natural for her to interfere in someone else's marriage. Elder Su sat here as if questioning Mo Jingshin with the attitude of a dignified elder. Who did he think he was? There was really no one in this world that Jinwan didn't dare to offend. If others were polite to her, she would naturally be polite, but this boss Su brought Su Jilan to her door during the new year. And what was an ex-girlfriend? Chapter 344. Elder Su didn't expect Jinwan dare to speak like this. His face darkened in an instant. Mo Shaozhen knew he was in the wrong, so he didn't say anything because he had been involved in this matter with the Su family. Su Jilan was so angry that she didn't show her emotions, but her eyes were fixed on Jinwan. Everyone, seeing Su Jilan's restrained gaze, Mo Jingshin took Jinwan's hand and stood up. His face was as calm as water, and he maintained his usual reserved modesty on certain occasions, but his eyes were cold. "I'm sorry. Wan is pregnant now and is not suitable for such an occasion. It will affect her mood. I'll take her back to the room first. If Elder Su and Miss Su sincerely want to stay here for the New Year's Eve dinner, the Mo family welcomes you two to stay for the New Year's Eve dinner. But if you have other places to go, please take care." With that, he took Jinwan's hand and turned upstairs. He didn't walk fast, but he didn't look back without the slightest hesitation or courtesy. Jinwan didn't say anything and obediently followed him. Compared with Su Jilan, who took the initiative to show her around the Mo family, she certainly preferred to have Mo Jingshin take her upstairs to have a look. And the atmosphere in the living room was really not good right now, so she didn't want to be entangled too much. Mo Jingshin's attitude was even colder than hers. This man did not restrain himself at all, and even clearly ignored the Su family, not even giving face to Mo Shaoza and Wan Zhu. Especially Su Jilan. Su Jilan's face didn't show much emotion, but her eyes were cold. Wan Zhu and Mo Shaoza didn't react for a moment. What did Mo Jingshin say just now? Jinwan was pregnant. Jingshin. Wan Zhu immediately sat up from the sofa and was about to go to the stairs to ask, but the two of them had gone upstairs and didn't look back at all. At this time, Wan Zhu turned to look at Mo Shaoza. Mo Shaoza frowned, and his expression was not very satisfied. Elder Su had obviously come here with a purpose. He originally wanted Mo Jingshin to solve this matter by himself, but now he had walked away freely, leaving this mess to Wan Zhu. But Jinwan's pregnancy was really unexpected, When Elder Su heard that Jin Wan was pregnant, his face darkened to the extreme. He was about to get up and take Su Jilan back, but Su Jilan pressed his hand hard. "Grandpa, it's okay." Su Jilan lowered her eyes and said softly, "Miss Ji is Jingshan's wife now. It's natural for him to be so protective of his wife. Our attitude was indeed a bit harsh. Jingshan doesn't owe me anything." Hearing this, Imo Shaoza said, "That's right. Talking about this kind of thing will only add to our troubles. If we can't become in-laws, the friendship between our Mo and Su families won't change. Elder Su, you should take it easy. Now that Jin Wan is pregnant, as her father, I can't say anything more." Wanju smiled. "Today is the spring festival in our country. Since we're having a reunion dinner together, let's be friendly and lively. Let's put the past behind us. Jilan's conditions are so good, and there are so many men who are even more outstanding than Jingshan pursuing her. Our son may look pleasing to the eye, but his personality is actually very dull. Even if we're together, we might not be happy." At this moment, Jin Wan was holding the hand of a certain great CEO Mo as they toured the second floor of the Los Angeles Mo family home. At the end of the corridor, they pushed open the balcony window and walked out. Immediately, they could see the Roman statues Su Jilan had mentioned earlier. They were indeed very old, and one look was enough to tell that they were very valuable. These Roman statues from the 1980s were enough to buy her entire studio. They were really not things that ordinary people could afford to collect. Part of the pavilion behind was covered in ice and snow, but there were still several quiet paths that had been cleaned up. Several European-style buildings and lofts were neatly arranged. "Do you want to stay here tonight?" Mo Jingshan's well-defined fingers threaded through her hair and touched her head. "Sure, it doesn't matter where we stay. Anyway, this place is so big, and your mother seems to like me very much. There won't be any pressure staying here." Jin Wan abruptly turned around and leaned against the balcony, raising her head to look at the tall man. "No wonder grandfather specifically used your mother's matter to mock Dad. As expected, your parents' personalities are not on the same level." Mo Jingshan smiled. "Then let's stay here for one night and leave tomorrow." "And? All right." It got dark quickly. When Jin Wan went downstairs with Mo Jingshan, she found that Elder Su and Su Jilan had not left. Elder Su and Mo Shaoza had just opened a bottle of good wine, and Su Jilan was pouring wine for them. The tense atmosphere in the afternoon seemed to have disappeared. Seeing Jin Wan come downstairs, Wanju immediately came up to her and asked eagerly, "Daughter-in-law, are you really pregnant?" Jin Wan nodded. "Less than 2 months. The doctor said the fetus was not very stable, so I didn't dare to tell you about it so early. It doesn't matter if the fetus is unstable. When I was pregnant with Jingshan, the fetus was also unstable. I just need to lie down and rest." Wanju immediately looked at Mo Jingshan with a smile. "No wonder you want to take Jin Wan back to the room to rest. You're much more reliable than your father. You even know how to dote on your wife. When I was pregnant with you, I had a stomachache every day, but your father didn't care about anything except sending me to the hospital with a sullen face. He didn't even care about me. He was not considerate at all." Mo Shaoza, who had just clinked glasses with Elder Su and taken a sip of wine on the sofa. When Wanju took Jin Wan to sit down, she leaned close to Jin Wan and whispered, "Miss Su and Elder Su won't go back tonight. They will stay here for the night. The Su family and the Mo family are old friends. What happened in the afternoon was a bit too hurtful to Elder Su. Tonight, let him have a few drinks with Jingshan's father to ease the relationship. If you don't like to face them, go back to the room with Jingshan after dinner. Don't worry about being polite. I understand." With such a reasonable mother-in-law, no matter how much she didn't like having New Year's Eve dinner with Su Jilan, Jin Wan could bear it with a smile. "It's all right. There's nothing I don't want to face. And it's not just a matter of politeness. I can distinguish between the host and the guest. Don't worry, I won't mind." Jin Wan winked at her. Wanju patted Jin Wan's shoulder and winked at her. Chapter 345. After the reunion dinner, Wanju urged Mo Jingshan to bring Jin Wan back to the room. Even Jean Wan herself could tell that Mo Jingshan's mother didn't intend to let her sit at the same dining table with the Su family for too long. She used the excuse that Jean Wan needed more rest during her pregnancy to urge her. After returning to the room, Jean Wan took a look at the time. It was still morning in China. She sent New Year's greetings to all her colleagues in the studio and then called Ji Hongwen. After learning that there was still no news from Ji Mingran, she accompanied Ji Hongwen for a few words. After hanging up the phone, Jean Wan felt uncomfortable that she could not rush back to accompany Ji Hongwen for the new year. She did not know how he would deal with Shun Haru's matter, but the Ji family must be very cold this year. She turned to enter the bathroom and soaked for a long time. When she was about to fall asleep, she suddenly heard the door open. She turned to see that Mo Jingshan had entered. She was still in a daze when he carried her out of the bathtub. "You didn't continue chatting with Dad and Elder Su?" Jean Wan's body was wet. She was afraid that she would wet his clothes, but seeing that he did not seem to mind, she did not resist. Before she was carried out of the bathroom, she grabbed a towel by the side and wrapped it around herself, lest she was carried out naked. "It's getting late. It's more important to accompany you." Mo Jingshan carried her to the bed, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. His dark gaze fell on her collarbone and shoulders that were still wet. He closed his eyes and restrained himself before lifting a corner of the towel to help her dry her dripping hair. In the end, Jean Wan sat on the bed and obediently allowed Mo Jingshan to dry her hair. She held her chin with one hand and looked at the balcony by the side of the room. "Mrs. Wanzhou is really a good mother-in-law. When you were engaged to Su Zhilan, was she also this good to Miss Su?" Mo Jingshan's long and slender fingers ran through her hair. He said calmly, "At least it was much better than our current estranged relationship." Now, in the face of such a huge emotional gap in all aspects, Miss Su is still able to persevere in having a reunion dinner with us here. It's really admirable. But your mother is really a good person. She's definitely a mother-in-law with a high EQ. Before coming back here, I didn't expect to have such a mother-in-law. I thought that except for grandfather Mo, no one else in the Mo family likes me. Mo Jingshan's eyes lit up. "Don't worry, grandfather." Mo Jingshan's gaze was calm and distant. He touched her dry hair and put the hairdryer aside. His palm landed on her shoulder, saying, "Because she knows that my wife is you, and I am indeed her son. She knows in her heart who she should side with." Jean Wan thought about Mo Jingshan's mother's actions today. She was extremely considerate towards outsiders and especially biased towards her family. She was indeed a mother-in-law who knew what she was doing. It was not yet midnight. The servant said that there were fruit platters, candies, and snacks downstairs. Jean Wan had been in a lot of trouble since she became pregnant. Today, the problem of gluttony of pregnant women was highlighted. While Mo Jingshan was taking a shower, she pushed open the door and was about to go downstairs to get some snacks. As soon as she went out, she heard some noise at the staircase. She and Mo Jingshan lived on the 3rd floor. As soon as she came to the 2nd floor, she saw Su Zhilan standing at the staircase. She seemed to be passing by, but she clearly wasn't. Su Zhilan also glanced at her and then looked behind Jean Wan, only to find that Mo Jingshan didn't come out with her. She didn't see him. "Miss Ji, you're pregnant. Congratulations." Su Zhilan leaned against the railing and stared at Jean Wan. Jean Wan didn't expect Su Zhilan to suddenly say this. She stopped. Jean Wan had heard more than once that Su Zhilan had mania, so she instinctively didn't approach her, but stood half a floor away from her on stairs. "Miss Su, why aren't you resting at this late hour?" "I can't sleep." Seeing that Jean Wan deliberately kept a distance from her, Su Zhilan moved her eyebrows slightly, raised her feet, and walked towards Jean Wan step by step. Seeing her come up like this, Jean Wan didn't think she would do anything so blatantly. Besides, mania, which was an uncontrollable emotion, usually had a temporary reason, but Su Zhilan looked too calm now. But Jean Wan still instinctively walked to the other side until she could hold the railing. She put her hand on the railing and put some strength on it, lest any accident happened. "I hope my grandfather's words didn't hurt you today." When Su Zhilan approached her, she said, "Miss Ji, Please be magnanimous and don't take it to heart. After leaving the hospital that day, I actually thought about it a lot. Since Jingshin has chosen you, this marriage is already a very legal fence. Besides, you are pregnant. This is a responsibility for Jingshin. At this point, I can't do anything even if I want to. Although I'm still a little unwilling, I can understand. Su Jilan's tone was natural and her expression was sincere. Unfortunately, Jinwan could hear the aggressiveness in her words, which seemed to be a concession. Was Su Jilan saying that Mo Jingshin was just a shackle of marriage and a responsibility he had to bear? I think Miss Su may have grown up in the United States, so you still don't know the proper usage of some Chinese words. The word understand can't be used in this way. Jinwan smiled lightly. There are many things that don't need to be repeated. Miss Su, you know in your heart whether the fence in front of you is our marriage or whether you have never really entered it. So how can you talk about breaking the fence? Su Jilan looked at her, and her eyes gradually turned cold. She finally regained her pride, and the coldness on her face showed that she was deeply hurt by Jinwan's words. Furthermore, Miss Su, since you've investigated me, you should know that Chairman Mo isn't particularly satisfied with me. However, under these circumstances, when Elder Su questioned me this afternoon, he chose to remain silent. It's obvious that he isn't very satisfied with you either. In terms of the Mo family alone, you've already been rejected. Jinwan's tone was cold and indifferent. She didn't deliberately highlight anything, but these honest words were the most hurtful. Su Jilan stopped talking to her and suddenly turned to go downstairs. Jinwan looked at her back and didn't lift her hand from the railing until she was far away. She looked down at her slightly sweaty palm and couldn't help laughing. Chapter 346. Early the next morning, Jinwan got up early and accompanied Ms. Wanju to the kitchen to study some desserts. She had heard from Mo Jingshan that his mother often studied health and was very good at all kinds of food. However, there were many servants at home, so she didn't need to do anything, but she still found opportunities to study all kinds of delicious food in the kitchen. Jinwan was helping to stir the eggs when she was suddenly fed a mouthful of peanut butter, which was sweet and fragrant. How does it taste? Wanju looked at her with shining eyes, looking forward to her daughter-in-law's praise. Jinwan smiled and licked the remaining peanut butter from the corner of her lips. She smacked her lips and said, not fully satisfied, "It's especially delicious. It's definitely the best peanut butter I've ever tasted in my life." Knowing that this little girl was just flattering her, Wanju happily fed her another mouthful, and then turned to make the cake, saying, "You and Jingshin have been living in the Yew Garden, haven't you? I'm familiar with Annie Chun and know she's good at cooking. Are you used to it?" Annie Chun cooks very well, and I'm not picky. Wanju looked at Jinwan, stirring the eggs in the blender, and asked with a smile, "Do you know how to cook?" Jinwan paused, looked down at her barely professional cooking skills, and answered, "I know a little, but I'm not very good at it. It's enough for me to be self-sufficient. But when Jingshin cooks, the food he cooks is much better than what I cook." Wanju turned to look at her in surprise. "Jingshin has cooked for you?" "Yes. My son is really biased. He has never cooked for me and his father even once in his life, let alone food. He hasn't even drunk a cup of tea that he personally poured for us." Wanju sighed as she said, "If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known that he had such an ability." "That's right. Jinwan, your son's ability is really great." Jinwan stayed in the Mo family until noon, occasionally chatting with Mo Jingshin's mother and learning how to make various kinds of coffee from the servants of the Mo family. When Elder Su and Su Jilan left, Jinwan didn't go out. Anyway, no one asked her to see them off, and she didn't bother to listen to what Su Jilan had to say before she left. In the evening, Ms. Wanju urged Jinwan to go back to her room for an afternoon nap. When she got up, it was already sunset. Originally, she thought they could have dinner here. After all, it was rare for them to have such a peaceful and leisurely moment. As soon as Mo Shaoza put down the phone, he informed the servants at home, "Prepare a few more sets of cutlery. The family will be here in a while." The servant responded and left. The hall suddenly fell into silence. Jean Wan raised her eyebrows. Did they all come together? Miss Su had just left at noon, and now Miss and was coming in the evening. She abruptly turned to look at Mo Jingshan. The man standing beside her slowly put one hand into his trouser pocket. His thin lips curved into a cold smile. The Mo family is particularly lively this year. Wan Wan needs to rest now. A lively environment is not good for her. I'll take her away first. With that, he took Jean Wan's hand and turned to leave. He still walked away without any hesitation. Mo Xiaozi immediately frowned. Before he spoke, Wanzhu suddenly tugged at his arm, glared at him, and said in a low voice, "Aren't you clearly driving them away?" The Su family came here on their own accord. What do you think of the family? It's not easy for Jingshan to bring his daughter-in-law back to stay for a night during the new year. I've been coaxing Jean Wan to stay a few more days, but now you're driving them away. Mo Xiaozi's face suddenly turned cold, and his eyes were filled with anger. Don't meddle in this kind of thing. The family just came to visit. Jean Wan is pregnant. What else can I do? You know Wan Wan is pregnant? Then why did you drag these people to her? You're on good terms with the family, but Wan Wan is pregnant with our own grandson. Don't you know who's close? The black Bentley drove out of the Mo family's villa in Los Angeles under the setting sun. Mo Jingshan's well-defined fingers gripped the steering wheel. He stared straight ahead, indifferent and clear, with a hint of coldness. Jean Wan sat in the passenger seat and looked at the man's profile. It's getting dark. Where are we going? She had been in the hospital for a long time since she came to Los Angeles. In the 2 days after she was discharged, she stayed at 11 Base and stayed at the Mo family's home. Jean Wan felt that she might have to stay in a hotel with him tonight. The man didn't answer her. After a moment of silence, he said in a low, indifferent voice, "You didn't eat much at noon. Do you want to eat out tonight? Or do you want me to cook for you when we go back?" Go back. Go back to where? Jean Wan was confused. He said, "I've been in Los Angeles for so long. I can't not have a place of my own." "Oh, you haven't been back for so long. Can you move in? There will be someone to clean it every day. You can move in at any time. I don't think there are any ingredients at home." Jean Wan's mouth was really spoiled by Mo Jingshan. Between going to a restaurant for dinner and going home to eat the food he cooked, she would definitely choose the latter. The black Bentley stopped in the parking lot of a large American supermarket chain. Mo Jingshan took a look at the time and said, "Go buy it. If it's too late, just buy the ingredients today and eat out. You can put the food in the fridge and cook it tomorrow. There's still time." All right. In fact, it was really late. It had been more than 50 minutes since they drove from the Mo family's home. She still didn't know where Mo Jingshan lived in Los Angeles. However, Mo Jingshan was obviously not in a good mood. Perhaps Mo Xiaozi's attitude just now annoyed him. She didn't say much, unfastened her seatbelt, got out of the car, and followed him to the supermarket. The two bought a lot of ingredients and fruits. Mo Jingshan also helped her get a box of maternity milk powder from a shelf. All kinds of things were piled up in the shopping cart. If Jean Wan hadn't stopped him, he would have looked at other nutrition and pregnancy essentials in the maternity section. She finally took him to the cashier to pay the bill. When they were about to go to the parking lot, Mo Jingshan put his arm around her shoulder and took her to the apartment across the road that was more than 80 stories high. Jean Wan didn't react at first. She wanted to say that he was carrying so many things in that hand. Was he not going to drive? Chapter 347. She didn't expect that Mo Jingshan's residence in Los Angeles was near the most prominent landmark in Los Angeles. She returned to his home many years ago and entered the door. The purely masculine facilities showed that he had lived here alone for a long time. It was getting late. Mo Jingshan told Jean Wan the direction of the bedroom, bathroom, and study, picked out the ingredients in the shopping bag, and methodically put the rest into the refrigerator. Then he washed a peach and handed it to the woman who had just finished shopping here. "I don't have your clothes here. Go to the closet and find a shirt to wear after taking a shower." Jean Wan took the peach and took a bite. Her mouth was full, and she answered with a smile, "Okay. Do you need my help?" "There's no need. Just wait here obediently." "Okay." Jean Wan wandered around his place again. When she went to the kitchen with the peach pit, She saw that the man's sleeves were rolled up and his tall and slender back was washing various ingredients by the sink. She pursed her lips, threw the peach pit away, and tiptoed over to hug him from behind. However, as soon as her hand reached out, the man suddenly said indifferently, "Do you like it here, or High City?" Jinwan paused, then chuckled, reached out to hug him, and pressed against his back. "Do you have eyes on the back of your head?" Mo Jingshun didn't look back, let her hold him, and continued to wash his vegetables. "I like any place where you are, but relatively speaking, I'm used to living in High City, and there aren't so many things to do. There's still a lot of things waiting for me in the studio. If I can go back to High City earlier, I'll definitely choose to go back earlier. Shine Group will hold a Chinese New Year's dinner party in 4 days. We'll go back after the dinner." "So soon? My injuries are no longer serious. There's no need to stay here for too long." Jinwan rubbed her face against the man's back. "Don't worry about me. You have a lot of things to do in the United States. The MO Corporation is very stable. If Dad insists on letting you take over Shine, you'll have to come to the United States sooner or later. I can't tie you to High City for the rest of your life. I don't mind being tied to you anywhere." The man dried his hands, turned back, and patted her on the head. "Stand aside. I'll cut the vegetables." With that, he began to cut the vegetables. It was just the movement of cutting vegetables, but it was so smooth and handsome that people couldn't take their eyes off it. Jinwan looked at his profile and movements, pursed her lips, and did not speak for a while. She did like High City, but she didn't forget that Mo Jingshin belonged to Shine, either in this life or in this life. Although there was no difference between taking over earlier and a few years later, many things had changed dramatically in her two lives. She wondered if it was too selfish of her to change Mo Jingshin's original life in the way she wanted it to be. Ji didn't seem to be able to help him. "You High City, Mo-G T Hi T. Hi Jinwan Jingshin Mo Shunt. Hi S Shan Shout Hi T Angelus T to say's time say. Angelus. G's Angelus. Ming no G was. Xiao Hai, Angelus. Can she washed her hands, turned on the TV, and changed several channels out of boredom. Finally, she found a music station to listen to music, and then went to fetch the tableware. Mo Jingshan said he was in a hurry tonight and only cooked a few dishes, but he still made several dishes, all of which were Jinwan's favorites. After dinner, it was past 9 o'clock in the evening. After dinner, Jinwan walked around the room twice and made a glass of the pregnant milk powder he bought for her. As she drank, she said, "I heard that pregnant milk powder will make you fat. Are you going to feed me into a ball in the first few months of my pregnancy?" Mo Jingshin smiled and gave her a new shirt. "I'm going to have a video conference. Take a shower if you're tired. Go to bed early." When Jinwan came out of the shower, Mo Jingshin was still in the study. It sounded like he was still in a meeting dealing with some sudden problems in High City. After listening outside the study for a while, Jinwan quietly turned back to the bedroom and didn't go in to disturb him. Late at night, Mo Jingshin came out of the study and went to the bedroom. The bedroom was very quiet. Jinwan was wearing a white men's shirt and sleeping soundly. Her cell phone was still in her hand. He took it and took a look at it, knowing that she was texting Xia Tian before going to bed. In addition to asking Xia Tian who she was in love with, she also asked Xia Tian 3 times in a row if she was with the scumbag who hit her. The content of a woman's chat was different from that of a man's, and there were all kinds of sweetness and shyness in it. In her sleep, Jinwan was suddenly hugged. She opened her eyes in a daze, saw it was Mo Jingshun, and subconsciously burrowed into his arms. The man's low voice was against her ear. "What did you dream of?" Jinwan smiled innocently in his arms and said hoarsely, "I dreamed of my previous life. I was lying motionless in prison, and then you suddenly appeared." The space instantly fell into a strange silence. Mo Jingshun took the cell phone from her hand and threw it on the bedside table. He lowered his eyes to look at the woman who was half asleep and still thought she was in a dream. He looked at her fair face with his deep and shallow eyes. Jinwan suddenly woke up. She realized what she had just said and shrank back into his arms. Avoiding the man's probing gaze, she said in an indistinct voice, "Back when I was studying in T-City, I would randomly read some novels when I couldn't sleep at night. After reading too many novels about the fate of several lifetimes, I would often dream of these messy things. I even dreamed that you and I were immortals in the past. I even dreamed that you were an emperor and I was a concubine. Then, I was bullied by you every day. Prison, that was the first time I dreamed of it. I might have really been poisoned by those illogical novels. She vaguely explained a few more words, buried her head in his arms, and pretended to sleep again. It was just a dream, and he shouldn't take it too seriously. Mo Jingshin's breath lingered in her hair and neck, and there was a faint warmth that tickled her heart. She couldn't fall asleep for a while. A moment later, she heard the man's low voice by her ear. "What do I look like in your dream?" Had she been discovered pretending to be asleep? Chapter 348. But he asked, what was that like? Jinwan's hand was pressed against the man's chest, her heart beating abnormally, and she was really immersed in that dream. In the dream, the man who suddenly rushed in the moment she fell to the ground with blood dripping from the corner of her mouth was not much different from him now, except that his hair was shorter and finer than it was now. 10 years had not left any trace on his body at all. She couldn't see his expression clearly in the dream, just like how she couldn't touch him in those 10 years. He was very far away and unreachable. Jinwan answered gloomily in his arms. Anyway, he's handsome. The man's slender fingers suddenly straightened her face, his forehead pressed against hers, and he said hoarsely, "Really?" Jinwan suddenly didn't dare to look into his eyes. She glanced at him and hurriedly nodded. "Really?" Mo Jingshin pinched her chin, lowered his head, and kissed her. When he was done, he purposely bit down on her lips and licked the corner of her lips. "Do I kiss you like this in your dreams?" Jinwan, of course not. That him was someone she couldn't even see if she wanted to. She pressed her back against the bed, closed her eyes, and turned her back to him, answering vaguely, "Anyway, I'm not as naughty as you are now. I'm going to sleep. Aren't you sleepy? And I'll hold you to sleep." He was behind her, holding her in his arms. Shine Group's cooperation dinner was held 4 days later, which was equivalent to the 5th day of the year according to the Chinese New Year. After all, it was a Chinese company, and it had many connections with many Chinese companies, so it was indeed very suitable to hold a dinner party on this day. In addition to the cooperation of various companies, such a dinner party was also held because of the New Year's atmosphere, so it was not too serious. There was a lot of food and drinks. Because Jinwan was pregnant, she didn't wear a tight dress, but bought a loose doll dress suitable for the dinner party. She tried on a white chiffon dress. She originally wanted to wear high heels, but Mo Jingshin refused. She was not allowed to wear high heels because she was pregnant, so she had to change into a pair of flats. Tonight's banquet, Nanheng was also present. Fengling was also present. She didn't wear a formal dress, but still wore that cool, black outfit. As soon as Jinwan saw Fengling, she asked Mo Jingshin to greet the executives of those companies first, so that he wouldn't have to worry about whether she was suitable for the smell of alcohol and refuse others' toasts every time. "Mrs. Mo, why don't you go with CEO Mo?" Seeing Jinwan suddenly come over, Fengling asked in confusion. "He's already introduced me to everyone, but it's really inconvenient for him to take care of me all the time. I said I wanted to come over to chat with you, so he let me come over." Jinwan blinked at her and then glanced at Nanheng. "Did you come with him?" Fengling's expression did not change. "He is the boss of the base and also my boss. He asked me to come, so I came." "Why are you in such a hurry to distance yourself?" "I didn't say anything." Jinwan was about to take Fengling inside to find a place with fewer people to stay for a while when she suddenly caught a glimpse of Shuyan. Shuyan came with the family and did not stand by Mo Xiao's side today. She also saw Jinwan. When their eyes met, Shuyan smiled politely at Jinwan, looked away, and stepped on the red carpet to the VIP area inside with the family. "You've been in the United States for so long. How much do you know about the companies and families that Shine Group often deals with?" Jinwan picked up a glass of champagne and played with it in her hand, as if casually asking Fengling next to her. Fengling decisively took the glass from her hand, stuffed a glass of juice in her hand, and answered, "The dozens of Chinese companies present today are all closely related to Shine Group. But there are also people like Miss Ann and Miss Sue who are related to Mr. Mo, but most of them admire Mr. Mo. There are also many young ladies from aristocratic families who have been neglected by him many years ago. Miss Sue is entangled with Mr. Mo only because she had a relationship with Mr. Mo a few years ago, and Missin is the one that Mo Shaoza sincerely wants a matchmake. As for the others, I basically can't remember their names." Jinwan raised her eyebrows. Based on this situation, in fact, Mo Jingshin and Mo Shaoza were both very principled people. At least one of them had a relationship with Mr. Mo, and the other was the daughter-in-law that Mo Shaoza unilaterally wanted. As for the others, they were very common in the upper-class circle. Not to mention Mo Jingshin. Even she had been pursued by many men in the upper-class circle in China, but at that time, she was proud and arrogant and ignored everyone. She didn't have a complicated relationship with anyone, except for Sheng Yihan. However, she kept him at arm's length and didn't have the slightest ambiguous relationship with him. Thinking of this, Jinwan felt more or less at ease. It was just the love between some young men and women in the circle. People couldn't control other people's love for them, not to mention that her husband was really outstanding. When Elder Su came with Su Zhilan, many people present must have attended the engagement party of Su Zhilan and Mo Jingshin. In an instant, many people looked at Su Zhilan, and from time to time, some young ladies glanced meaningfully at Jinwan. But what really attracted Jinwan's attention was not these people, but the person who came with Su Zhilan, Su Shui. After that soul-stirring farewell in T-City, Jinwan had thought that she would never see Su Shui again in this life. Mo Jingshin looked at the door and looked away from Su Zhilan and Su Shui. At the same time, Jinwan felt the man's eyes on her. She turned around and saw that Mo Jingshin had come over. "Feng Ling, keep an eye on Madam." Mo Jingshin suddenly took a look at Feng Ling as he took Jinwan's hand. Feng Ling knew very well what the two young ladies of the Su family would do. The moment she saw Su Zhilan and Su Shui, she instinctively raised her guard. She nodded. The red carpet in the banquet hall was in the middle, and there were many ways to go, but Su Zhilan seemed to deliberately pass here. She pulled Su Shui, who looked panic-stricken, to this side. When they passed by Jinwan and Mo Jingshin, many people around them looked at them gossiping, wondering if there would be any sparks between Mo Jingshin's ex-fiancée and his current wife. Being glanced at by so many people, Jinwan forced herself to look away, ignoring their boring gazes, and only looked at Su Shui. Chapter 349. Especially when she suddenly saw Jinwan, Su Shui seemed to be stimulated. She stared at her with red eyes, turned around, and came straight to Jinwan. Before Jinwan could see what was going on with Su Shui, Mo Jingshin had quietly pulled her behind him, and his tall and straight figure stood in front of her. "Jinwan, why are you here?" Su Shui stared at Jinwan as if she couldn't see anyone else. Su Shui was about to step forward when Mo Jingshin's low, cold voice rang. "Elder Su, what do you mean? Since Shui was frightened last time, she has been locked up at home. Isn't it the spring festival? We can't let the child stay at her room all day. Zhilan has the best relationship with her, so she took Shui here to relax while it's busy here. Shui's mental illness also needs to be exercised in crowded places. Maybe it will get better," Elder Su said with a smile. Mental illness? Jinwan didn't expect Su Shui's current state to be a sign of mental illness, but Su Shui could call out her name just now. Could it be that Mo Jingshin or Nan Heng did something to Su Shui after that incident? Revenge must exist, but what kind of fright and revenge did she suffer to become like this? Su Shui had lost at least 10 pounds, and her face was pale. She looked frightened and couldn't be provoked at all. She didn't look like she was pretending at all. Obviously, she was really ill. Jinwan didn't step forward. She just stood over Mo Jingshin's shoulder and looked thoughtfully at Su Shui, whose eyes were getting redder and redder as she stared at her. "All right, Shui, Miss G is also here to attend the party. It's all over." She won't do anything to you anymore. Don't be afraid. Su Zhilan took Su Shui's hand and coaxed her in a gentle voice, like a good sister who doted on her cousin very much. But in an instant, the people around were a little surprised. No one knew how Su Shui became like this, but it seemed that it was all because of Jin Wan that Su Shui became so pitiful. Su Shui was afraid of Jin Wan. Putting aside how powerful the Su family background was, Su Shui was the young lady of the Swan Group. Of the Su family's daughters, one was robbed of her man, and the other was so frightened that she developed a mental illness. And it was all because of Jin Wan? For a moment, the people around them looked at Jin Wan with a strange look in their eyes. Jin Wan glanced expressionlessly at Su Zhilan, who was pulling Su Shui into the crowd. She really didn't expect that she would bring Su Shui to such a place. What was the point of beating around the bush? Mo Jingshan's hand tightened, as if to comfort her. Wan Xian said, Jilan, Jilan, Xuan, and Xuan, Xuan, Su, and Yanamo, Su, Sun Wan Ji, Su Xian Shui Ji, Wan Ji, Su Jin Wan. Wan, Mo and Wan Su Ji, Xian Ji, Sun Wan Ji, and Shui Ji, Xian Su Ji Jingshan. Mo Jingshan tightened his grip on her hand and looked back at her. Let's leave early for the party tonight. We won't stay here for long. And Jin Wan nodded subconsciously. Feng Ling, who was standing by her side, said in a low voice that only she and Mo Jingshan could hear. Su Shui planned the kidnapping of you in T City. She used to have connections with the underworld forces behind the Su family, so she was very bold and dared to cooperate with that kind of underground bar. After she was forcibly sent back to the United States, Nanheng sent Kei to teach her a lesson, and then she became like this. Jin Wan turned to meet Mo Jingshan's eyes, and then to Feng Ling. What did Kei do to Su Shui? They just copied what she did at that time. They drugged her, kidnapped her, beat her, threatened her, and sold her to an underground bar in the United States. She was bought by 3 tall and strong black men and was tortured by them for several days. When the Su family begged the police to save her, Su Shui was almost at her last breath. That terrible scene appeared in Jin Wan's mind again. If Mo Jingshan hadn't come in time, she might have been killed. What would have happened? Would she have been raped and then committed suicide? Or would she have been sold to countless people because she didn't even have the strength to commit suicide? Su Shui suffered such a fate because of herself. Since Kei and the others only copied what she did, she could only blame herself. However, after being frightened and being tortured by the 3 black men for a few days, it was not surprising that Su Shui had become this absent-minded and emaciated appearance. The Su family had gone far away. Mo Jingshan held Jin Wan's hand and put her by his side, not leaving. When the banquet was at its climax, there was a burst of laughter and applause. It seemed that Mo Xiaozhou was drinking and talking with several partners. Jin Wan saw many people around her were applauding, so she also raised her hand and clapped. She looked around the crowd, but didn't see Su Shui and Su Zhilan. Perhaps Su Shui's condition was too bad, and Su Zhilan had succeeded in tricking Jin Wan with Su Shui's excuse. So she had taken Su Shui away? Everyone raised their glasses and drank together. Jin Wan didn't drink tonight because she was pregnant, but Mo Jingshan just smiled and held her hand calmly. This man was really good-looking, especially when he smiled. The banquet went well. In the second half of the banquet, Jin Wan touched her belly. She had to go to the bathroom frequently during her pregnancy. She said, Jingshan, I'm going to the bathroom. At this time, a partner was talking with Mo Jingshan, and it was not convenient for Mo Jingshan to go to the ladies' room. He patted her hand and motioned for her to go to Feng Ling. Let Feng Ling accompany you. Okay. Jin Wan turned and went to Feng Ling. When she was about to go over, she suddenly saw that Nan Heng was pushing Feng Ling into a corner of the banquet hall. In the darkness of the corner, there seemed to be something ambiguous. Jin Wan, it didn't seem appropriate to go there. She glanced over there, and then at the bathroom, just a few steps behind her, on the other side, Feng Ling had just come out of the shackles of Nan Heng. She looked at the banquet hall expressionlessly, only to find that Jin Wan, who had been following Mo Jingshun, was gone. Chapter 350. Just as Feng Ling was feeling suspicious, suddenly, a scream came from the bathroom not far away. The scream didn't sound like Jin Wan, but it was drowned out by the bustling banquet hall. Only Feng Ling, who had just walked nearby, could hear it clearly. Feng Ling walked quickly to the women's bathroom and was about to push it open, only to find that the door was locked from the inside. "Mrs. Mo, are you in there?" Feng Ling frowned warily, pressed against the door, and asked in a low voice. It was quiet inside, and no one answered. Even the person who screamed just now was silent. Feng Ling suddenly raised her foot and kicked the door hard. The loud crash startled everyone in the banquet hall. As the lock of the bathroom door was kicked down, Feng Ling quickly pushed the door open and searched inside with her sharp eyes, but there was no one in the bathroom. The scream just now was not Jin Wan, but the things scattered on the floor of the bathroom were Jin Wan's. A sharp pain came from her neck. Jin Wan frowned and slowly opened her eyes in a daze. The first thing she saw was Su Shui holding a fruit knife with a crazed look in her eyes, pressing the sharp side of the knife against her neck. The pain and coldness on her neck gradually woke Jin Wan up. She was about to shrink back when Su Shui moved the knife back with her. "What are you doing?" Jin Wan's head hurt. For a moment, she couldn't remember how she was drugged, but Su Shui's eyes looked crazy. Her hair stood on end because of the other party's eyes. "Jin Wan, you finally fell into my hands." Su Shui widened her eyes and stared at the faint trace of blood on Jin Wan's white neck. As if stimulated by something more bloodthirsty, she smiled grimly and pressed the fruit knife harder against her carotid artery. "You ruined me. I'm going to kill you. Jin Wan, I'm going to kill you." Jin Wan felt that she was still under the effects of a drug and did not have much strength. However, she saw that Su Shui's hand that was holding the knife was trembling. She slowly raised her hand tentatively. While Su Shui was focused on pressing the knife in her neck, she abruptly raised her hand and used all her strength to hold on her wrist. She then used some strength to force her wrist open and took the opportunity to snatch the knife away. Su Shui watched the opportunity to kill her disappear. She froze for a moment, looked at her empty hands, glared at Jin Wan coldly, and raised her hands to strangle her neck. "Jin Wan, I want you to die. Su Shui, wake up." Jin Wan avoided her hand and raised her arm to push her away. She turned to look at the scene outside the window, and her eyelids twitched. What was going on? Why were they in the car? Outside the car window, it looked like a highway. Both sides of the road were barren, and there was nothing. Suddenly being shouted at by Jin Wan, Su Shui stared at her, trembling all over. "Do you think you can still hurt me?" "Jin Wan, even if you want to kill me, I'll die with you. I'll kill you first." Hearing this, Jin Wan suddenly turned to look at Su Shui's crazy eyes. "You didn't drug me?" Su Shui acted as if she had heard a joke. "You're still pretending? You relied on your ability to pretend to be innocent to make Mo Jingshun fall for you, didn't you? It was you who drugged me. Fortunately, I woke up early. Fortunately, I put a knife in my bag before I went to the party. I can take your life anytime, anywhere." Not Su Shui. They were both drugged at the same time? Su Shui said, and was about to pounce on her again. Jin Wan frowned and waved her away. "Calm down first." While holding Su Shui's wrist, she looked up at the car. It was a new BMW speeding on the highway. She and Su Shui were in the back of the car, and there was a glass or thick plastic partition between them and the driver's seat in front of the car, so they couldn't see who was driving. Judging from the scene outside the window, the speed of the car was at least more than 150 miles per hour. Why were they drugged and brought into this car at the same time? Jin Wan raised her hand and pressed her forehead. She remembered that when she went to the bathroom, she happened to see Su Shui in there. At that time, Su Shui was standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom and applying lipstick. She looked at Jin Wan through the mirror, as if there was an abyss in her eyes that was about to swallow Jin Wan. Her eyes were very strange, revealing the same madness and hatred as now. Jinwan only took 2 steps in and subconsciously wanted to retreat. She didn't want to be in the same place with such a mentally unstable person. However, before she went out, 2 women suddenly ran in behind her who were eager to go to the bathroom. She didn't see them clearly, but she did want to go to the bathroom at that time, and there was only one bathroom on that floor. Seeing that she and Su Shui were not alone here, Jinwan avoided Su Shui and went to the door a little farther on the other side. When she came out of the cubicle in the bathroom, Su Shui had disappeared. Then Jinwan went to wash her hands. As soon as she put her hands under the water, she suddenly heard a scream from the soundproof door nearest her. The voice sounded very much like Su Shui's. She shivered all over and instinctively turned to walk out. At that moment, the cubicle door behind her was opened with a bang, and someone rushed out. Before Jinwan could get out of the bathroom, she was dragged back, and the door of the bathroom was locked by the 2 strong women. A wet cloth covered Jinwan's mouth and nose, and the pungent smell made her more and more dazed until she lost consciousness. Everything happened in just 2 or 3 seconds, and she couldn't react at all. But she never expected that she and Su Shui would be drugged and taken away at the same time. Listen, now is not the time to be crazy. Jinwan looked out of the window at the highway and the deserted hills and rivers on both sides of the road and said solemnly, "We may have been kidnapped at the same time. Who asked you to go to the party? Did Su Zhilan invite you to go to the party with her? Or did you unilaterally take the initiative to go with her?" Su Shui stared at Jinwan. "Are you trying to drive a wedge between me and my cousin?" Chapter 351. Seeing Jinwan's cold and serious eyes, Su Shui was more or less shaken. Her slightly pale lips trembled before she reluctantly said, "Seeing that I've been locked up by my family for too long, my cousin's heart aches for me. She said she would take me out to relax." With that, she suddenly glared at Jinwan. "Don't try to sow discord between us. I'm very close to my cousin. Even if there was a kidnapping, it would have nothing to do with her." She was stupid. She didn't know that she had been used once, and now she was being used a second time. She didn't know how powerful her cousin was. If they really had a good relationship, Su Zhilan would have stopped Su Shui from going to T-City to court her death from the very beginning. If it weren't for Su Zhilan's pitiful and instigation, Su Shui, who was impulsive, wouldn't have been bold enough to run into Mo Jingshan's gun. And today, if Su Zhilan didn't have a purpose, she wouldn't have taken Su Shui, who was so crazy, to the party. There was no way she could reason with a lunatic like this. Being driven at such a terrifying speed, Jinwan felt nauseous again. She didn't know if the drug had stimulated her, but from the moment she woke up, a certain part of her stomach had been throbbing in pain. Jinwan suppressed the panicky feeling of weightlessness, waved away Su Shui's hand that was about to pinch her shoulder, and patted the partition between her and the driver's seat. It was a layer of black glass and plastic, which should not be particularly strong. Jinwan patted it again, then looked down at the flat shoes on her feet, and then at the high heels on Su Shui's feet. She decisively bent down and took off her shoes. "What are you doing?" Su Shui's eyes were instantly filled with vigilance because of Jinwan's strange action. Jinwan ignored her, raised the strong heel of her shoe, and smashed it hard on the partition in front of her. Now the car was driving at such a terrible speed, and there were cars of all sizes on both sides from time to time, and she found that the car had been driving in a straight line. She had to find a way to stop the car. The heavy thud startled Su Shui and made her shrink aside. For a moment, she didn't know what to do with Jinwan's neck. Jinwan knew that for a person like Su Shui, who was stimulated and a little crazy, such noise would affect her mood, so she just silently banged on the partition and didn't ask her any more questions. Now was not the time to bicker. The 2 of them were in the same boat. If something happened, both of them would either die or be injured. Jinwan smashed the partition hard several times, and a crack finally appeared in the middle. Jinwan's hand was a little numb, so she continued to smash it with the other hand. When a huge hole was smashed in the middle of the partition, Jinwan did not feel any joy or relief, but her heart sank in an instant. There was no one in front of the car. The car was actually driverless. From the time they were thrown into the car to the time they woke up, at least 10 minutes had passed. The car had been driving at a speed of 150 miles per hour. It was common to see a highway without any detours in the United States, but it was definitely not that simple to maintain the speed of the car with the two of them in it. Now, do you still believe in your cousin? Jinwan stared at the empty driver's seat and asked in a low voice. Su Shui looked shocked and didn't understand. What did the driverless car have to do with her relationship with Su Zhilan? Someone wants to use you to get rid of me, but they don't intend to let you live at all. Su Shui, you're really poor. You've done a lot of things for your cousin since you were a child, but in the end, it must be you who bear the responsibility. And your good sister, who is always protected by you, has always been like a cold blue lotus, untainted by the mud. Hasn't she? Jinwan gave her a sarcastic look. Su Shui sat stiffly in the back as if she hadn't understood Jinwan's words. He was stupid enough to begin with. Now that he had gone crazy, it was even more incomprehensible. Jinwan withdrew her gaze from her and quickly smashed the hole in front of her with the heel of her shoe until most of the partition was smashed down. Then she crawled forward to the driver's seat and raised her hand to control the steering wheel, only to find that not only was the car's speed fixed, but even the steering wheel was locked. She couldn't control the direction at all, let alone brake. Both the brakes and clutch were loose and completely useless. Jinwan lowered her head and looked down, only to find that the car had been modified. Several places under the seat had clearly been tampered with. She saw several thick red, yellow, blue, and green lines crisscrossing under the seat, and for a moment, she felt a chill down her spine. Could it be that this car was installed with a self-ignition system? Noticing Jinwan's pale face, Su Shui immediately trembled and leaned on the seat behind her. Can you stop the car? Jinwan glanced at her silently. Rather than saying that Su Zhilan was manic, it was better to say that Su Zhilan was a person who would do anything to achieve her goals. Her cousin, who was always considerate of her, was used by her to such an extent. Now, in order to get rid of her, she was even willing to sacrifice Su Shui's life. If they really died in this car, no one would consider whether Su Zhilan was the culprit, because everyone knew that Su Shui and Jinwan had a grudge, and they also knew that Su Shui hated Jinwan. They also knew that Su Shui was crazy, and a lunatic could do anything terrible. So, such a crazy and terrible act of mutual destruction could only be done by Su Shui, who was already crazy. By then, Su Shui would be dead, and there would be no evidence. While successfully eradicating her rival in love, she could also be cleared of suspicion. Feng Ling had said that Su Zhilan was not simple. Sure enough, she was not simple. Jinwan glanced at the wires hidden under the car. Her and Su Shui's bags were gone, and there were no scissors or other tools at hand. It was impossible for high-heeled shoes to break such thick wires, and it was impossible for her hands to break them. The wires were not so long that they couldn't be pulled up and broken. Jinwan raised her hand and moved the steering wheel a few more times, but there was nothing she could move. She looked at the car again, which had been set at 150 miles per hour, and then looked out the window at the scenery of the road that kept moving backward at a terrifying speed. From time to time, cars flew past or were overtaken by the car. Even if there was no end to this straight highway, even if the car could slowly stop when the fuel ran out, if the car was really installed with a self-ignition system, it could explode at any time. Maybe in a minute, maybe in half an hour. Unknown danger could happen at any time. Should she jump out of the car? Jump out of the car at 150 miles per hour. Chapter 352. Jinwan covered her aching belly with her hand, and her eyes gradually turned red. If she jumped like this, even if she didn't die, she would be hurt. Not to mention she was pregnant. The other party really gave her a big problem. Jinwan, why are you sitting here? Stop the car. Why don't you stop the car? Several cars passed by at a strange speed, making people panic. Su Shui screamed from behind. Are you trying to kill me? Stop the car. Get out of the car if you want to live. This car can't be stopped. Jinwan didn't bother to explain too much to her. She raised her hand and tried the car doors. As expected, they were all locked. Fortunately, the car was on land and not under water pressure. If there was no water pressure, she could use a sharp object to break the car window. Jinwan knocked Su Shui's high-heeled shoes on the car window several times. Her arms, which had been a little numb, were almost powerless now. She changed her hands to knock on the car window. In the end, she put on the high-heeled shoes that were a size larger than her feet, turned sideways on the seat, and kicked the car window hard with her foot. "What are you doing?" Su Shui looked at her strange actions blankly. "Don't talk so much nonsense." Jinwan kicked the car window and turned to look at her. "If you want to live, come and help me open the car window." Su Shui shrank her neck. She didn't believe Jinwan at all. The banging sound in the car made her even more panicked. Suddenly, she saw the fruit knife abandoned on the ground, picked it up, and pointed it at Jinwan again. "If you don't stop the car quickly, I'll kill you now." Jinwan glanced at her coldly and grabbed the fruit knife. Ignoring Su Shui's increasingly panicked and crazed eyes, she got up, put the fruit knife in the gap between the car window and the car door, and then smashed it with her high heels. Su Shui's eyes were cold. The car window was too strong. No wonder the other party had specially bought a new car to set up such a big conspiracy. All the windows of the new car basically had a smash-proof function. Jinwan gritted her teeth and pulled out the metal bar on the passenger seat to knock on the window, as she and Mo Jingshan had done when they had escaped underwater. The car window was damaged one after another, and finally there was a gap. Jinwan slashed it again, cut open the seal with a fruit knife, and smashed it with her shoe until the whole car window was broken and fell down. Jinwan lay on the car window and observed the wasteland on both sides of the highway. Ahead of her was a sunken hill. There was no water, and it was barren. She didn't know where it was. At a speed of 150 miles per hour, the moment the car window was opened, a gust of wind rushed in. Jinwan narrowed her eyes and looked around. Suddenly, she turned and said, "Su Shui, come here." Su Shui's face was filled with fear as the strong wind blew in, and she shook her head vigorously. Jinwan lost her patience and reached out to tug at her. "Your cousin wants to harm you. Are you really going to let her have her way? Although we might get hurt, we have to jump to survive." "Jump? I don't want it. I'll definitely die if I jump at this speed. You really want to harm me?" Su Shui screamed and pushed her. Jinwan tugged her hard. Since she couldn't reason with her, she had to use force. Just as the two of them were fighting, Jinwan suddenly seemed to hear the sound of a siren. She turned her head abruptly and looked at the wires under the seat. The siren sounded frightening. She tightened her grip and pulled Su Shui to the open window. "Jump! I don't want to jump." The two of them kept fighting, and Jinwan couldn't divert her attention to the huge truck that had been following this car. Su Shui was almost pushed out by Jinwan again and again. She didn't know where the brute force came from, but she suddenly grabbed Jinwan's neck and forced Jinwan to let go of her. Then she turned over and pressed Jinwan hard against the car door. Her eyes were red as she strangled Jinwan's neck and shouted, "If you want to die, die by yourself. Don't drag me. Go to hell, you." Jinwan was shocked to see the hatred in Su Shui's eyes. She wanted to wake her up, but her face was red and she couldn't speak. Just as she was about to be pushed out of the car window by Su Shui, half of Jinwan's body was exposed outside the window. Out of the corner of her eye, she finally saw the huge truck that had been following closely behind, and at the same time, she saw the black Bentley speeding up behind it. Bentley? A black Bentley? At this angle and speed, she couldn't see the license plate clearly, but the model of the car was so familiar to her that she frowned hard. Just as she was distracted, Su Shui pushed her out with force. Jinwan's back brushed against the remaining glass fragments of the car window. The pain made her lose the strength to resist. The moment she was pushed out, with the inertia of the speeding car and the speed at which she was thrown, she felt as if she was flying for 2 seconds and then fell heavily to the ground. At the moment of falling, Jinwan subconsciously covered her stomach with her hand, but her body rolled several times on the ground. Her limbs and bones were in so much pain that she almost lost consciousness. Almost at the same time, the huge truck rushed straight in her direction and even sped up. Hearing the sound, Jinwan raised her head with a jerk and looked at the huge truck that was about to rush towards her. The truck was coming straight for her. Even the escape route of jumping out of the car had been blocked. She didn't even have the last chance of survival. Despair and panic swamped her in an instant. At this critical moment, the black Bentley, several meters behind the huge truck, suddenly sped up. At the moment when Jinwan was about to be run over by the truck, the black Bentley rushed in her sight at an astonishing speed and decisively stood between her and the truck. Boom! There was a loud bang. In a trance, Jinwan seemed to see the license plate number of the black Bentley rushing over, and a string in her brain snapped with a loud crash. Don't! Jinwan's body was thrown to the side of the road by the impact of the two cars in front of her. After rolling several times, she couldn't control her body and hit hard against the safety fence on the side of the highway. She felt as if her abdomen was being torn apart, and waves of pain assaulted her. The cars in the rear slammed on the brakes one after another because of the terrible accident in front of them. With a series of breaking sounds, the world seemed to fall silent for an instant. Jinwan raised her eyes with some difficulty and looked at the black Bentley that was almost hit by the huge truck. Chapter 353. Jinwan's entire body trembled in pain. Her heart felt empty. She stared at the car, her hands struggling to crawl on the ground. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not move. The sharp, throbbing pain in her abdomen stimulated her nerves. Jingshan, in the distance, there was a loud explosion. There is no need to guess to know that the car Su Shui was in had self-ignited and exploded. The fire and thick black smoke covered the sky with a layer of fog. The highway was suddenly quiet and suffocating, and the smell of death slowly penetrated Jinwan's skin. Her tense and disordered nerves cooled down bit by bit, but she felt cold and bone-chilling. Jinwan had never felt the sky was so gloomy. The black Bentley stopped there motionlessly, and the gasoline under the car sprang up a small fire. Jinwan stared at the fire, gritted her teeth, and tried desperately to crawl over to put out the fire, but after a long time, she only moved a few centimeters forward. Mrs. M.O. Feng Ling's voice followed. A lot of drivers had gathered behind the giant truck. She quickly pushed the crowd away and ran in. When she saw Jinwan lying on the ground with red eyes, she rushed over. Feng Ling crouched down to help Jinwan up, but Jinwan kept staring at the black Bentley and said hoarsely, "Who is the person in the car? Let me help you up first." Feng Ling almost never cried. Now seeing Jinwan's blank eyes and the blood oozing from her lower body, her eyes almost turned red. She stepped forward and tried to help her up, but Jinwan couldn't even stand steadily and just kept staring at the car. "Tell me, who is the person in the car?" Feng Ling gritted her teeth and didn't speak. Jinwan slowly turned her eyes to Feng Ling. "Is it Mo Jingshan?" Feng Ling grabbed her arm to prevent her from falling, but her hand holding her arm trembled slightly. She tried to comfort her, but she couldn't suppress her emotions at all. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "Mr. M.O., and we have tracked your location and chased you all the way. We were half an hour behind you and finally caught up with you as fast as we could, but just now, when we saw you being pushed out of the car window, Mr. Mo's car suddenly accelerated to the limit." Jinwan's mind went blank for a moment. The person in the car was Mo Jingshan. The moment her consciousness stopped, Jinwan suddenly pushed Feng Ling away, turned around, and staggered in the direction of the car. Feng Ling didn't expect that she still had the strength to push herself away and step back. When she reached out to help her, Jinwan had already rushed to the side of the black Bentley. She rushed forward to hold Jinwan, who almost knelt on the ground, and held her arm tightly. "Mrs. Mo, don't do this." Jinwan stared at the motionless Bentley in front of her and couldn't hear anything. Nanheng, who rushed into the crowd almost at the same time as Feng Ling, didn't say a word and directly asked Kay and the others to catch the driver of the giant truck. At the same time, a group of people were solemnly preparing to rescue him. The driver's around, and G, and they pointed. In. And did the car in front explode? Did you? Is it too scary? Look, the car and MOG said. Shun. And she. Have a handshake to say, and. The car is leaking oil. Look, the oil is on fire. Will this car explode too? The whispers of the crowd couldn't reach Jean Wan's ears. She held back her tears and stared at the broken window with bloodshot eyes. She tried to push Feng Ling away, but Feng Ling still held her arm tightly and finally hugged Jean Wan with both hands. Mrs. M.O., don't be impulsive. Let me go. Mrs. M.O., Feng Ling, let me go. Jean Wan screamed. Let me go. This car may spontaneously combust at any time. Mr. M.O. risked his life to rush here and block the way just to save your life. No matter what happens to Mr. M.O., if you don't leave now, won't Mr. Mo's sacrifice be in vain? Sacrifice what? How could he be sacrificed? He won't. Jean Wan struggled crazily in her arms and finally couldn't move. Hearing the sound of Nan Hung and Feng Ling trying to open the door, she couldn't hold back her tears and knelt to the ground powerlessly. Jean Wan. Feng Ling couldn't help calling her name. She lowered her head and saw Jean Wan's trembling and twitching shoulders. She held her shoulders and said calmly, Your lower body is covered with blood. Get in the car first. Jean Wan, don't be like this. Seeing the fire on the gasoline under the car getting bigger and bigger, Jean Wan wanted to go up and put it out. Nan Hung suddenly looked at Jean Wan and said seriously, Feng Ling, take Jean Wan away immediately. It was necessary to take Jean Wan away. With Nan Heng's order, Feng Ling forced Jean Wan up from the ground, put her arms around her shoulders, and took her hand. Let's go. Jean Wan didn't speak or move. She just stared at the black Bentley and watched the blood spreading out along the door. She felt dizzy. Mo Jingshan, come out, come out. Jean Wan's mind was blank. She unconsciously walked to the car door, but was held down by Feng Ling. She stared blankly at the deformed car door. The airbag of a Bentley is better than that of many cars. He'll be fine, right? Jean Wan seemed to be talking to Feng Ling, but also seemed to be talking to the person in the car, and more like talking to herself. Feng Ling didn't say anything. No matter how good the car was, it was driven at the limit of its speed. If it was an ordinary car at this speed, it would have been smashed into pieces in an instant. The huge impact was not something a normal person could bear. Besides, Mr. M.O. drove the car horizontally, and the side of the car was hit. The defense of the side was not as strong as that of the front and back of the car, so the situation inside the car was obviously no better than outside. It could only be worse than what they saw. At the moment when Jean Wan was almost crushed to death by the giant truck, Mr. M.O. used his life to exchange for Jean Wan's. Just now, when he suddenly drove the car to the limit, no one could see this scene. Even though Feng Ling had been through fire and water for so many years and was used to death, she still couldn't forget the scene just now. Feng Ling held Jean Wan's hand, pulled her over, and was about to take her away. In fact, Jean Wan didn't have much strength, and the red and sticky lower body made her realize what she had lost at this moment. Why did this happen? Why did it suddenly become like this? Chapter 354. Feng Ling forcibly took Jean Wan back to the black SUV not far behind. As soon as she opened the door, there was a sudden noise. It sounded like the deformed car door was finally opened. Hearing the noise, Jean Wan froze, turned her eyes in that direction with a jerk, and turned to walk back. Jean Wan, don't go over there. Mo Jingshan is there. I heard them open the car door. Feng Ling held her and didn't let her move. In this situation, Mr. M.O. was probably covered in blood. If Jean Wan went over in this state, she would probably suffer a big blow. Feng Ling, let me go over. Jean Wan, I beg you. Jean Wan finally could not hold it in any longer. She choked with sobs, and large drops of tears rolled down her battered and blood-stained face. She stared stubbornly in that direction. Let me go see him. I want to go see him. Feng Ling made up her mind and pulled Jean Wan back with force. Jean Wan's whole body bumped into her arms. Feng Ling was about to help her into the car when Jin Wan's whole body suddenly softened and she fell down. Jin Wan. Feng Ling was startled and rushed to hold her steady. Fearing that something really happened to her, she helped her into the car. When she looked down and saw the blood on Jin Wan's lower body, she hurriedly took off her black coat and wrapped it around her lower body. Then she quickly contacted the nearest rescue team and emergency center. Feng Ling watched Jin Wan being pushed out of the car. A normal person would be hurt after being pushed out of a car at such a speed, let alone Jin Wan's stomach. Feng Ling didn't dare to think anymore. She held the phone in one hand and held Jin Wan's hand tightly with the other, but only felt a bone-chilling coldness. Jin Wan's blood seemed to be frozen. From her hands to her face to her neck, she was cold everywhere. She was still frowning in her coma and murmuring indistinctly. Listening carefully, she seemed to be calling Mo Jingshan's name. When Jin Wan woke up, she thought she just had a nightmare, but as soon as she moved, she felt pain all over, as if all her bones and flesh had been taken apart and reassembled. For a moment, she almost suspected that her rebirth was fake. Perhaps she had just returned to the despair and pain 10 years later. She stared blankly at the snow-white walls and ceiling of the hospital. After a long time, she slowly turned her eyes to look around. Hospital again, but it was an intensive care unit. She felt as if there were 2 fixed tubes delivering oxygen to her nose. She felt as if there was something clamped on her fingers. There were several medical instruments around her, and from time to time, beeping sounds could be heard. Jin Wan opened her eyes and closed them again. After a moment, she opened them again. The nightmare-like experience on the highway lingered in her mind. She wanted to treat it all as a nightmare, but the faint pain in her stomach and the 4 drip on the back of her hand told her the cruelest truth. If the child was still there, the doctor would not have given her an injection. The ward was very quiet. Jin Wan didn't move. She didn't have the strength to move. She silently digested all this, and her heart and abdomen seemed to ache at the same time. She had a dream just now. She dreamed that Mo Jingshan took her to the upper reaches of the Los Angeles River. She dreamed that Imon Wan Studio was officially listed in High City and became a joint stock real estate company. She dreamed that she and Mo Jingshan appeared together at the Domestic Business Managers Conference. She dreamed that they stood side by side, and she was by his side, becoming the best version of herself. But when she opened her eyes, she found that she was surrounded by a cold and pale ward. There was no one around. This was a sterile ward. Only doctors in sterile clothes could enter. Jin Wan lay quietly alone. Seeing the doctor come in and check her body by the bedside, he found that Jin Wan had woken up. The doctor put his gloved hand on her forehead and said to her in English, as if comforting her, "Miss G, although I know this may be cruel to you, we must apologize to tell you that the child was not saved. It was not easy for an adult to survive such a huge fall and impact. You have been unconscious here for 5 days and successfully passed the critical period. After 2 more days of observation, you could be transferred to a general ward." Jin Wan looked at the doctor silently and blinked gently, indicating that she had heard him. The doctor had seen many women who went crazy or emotional after suffering a major accident, but Jin Wan was very quiet and motionless. She slowly closed her eyes and was very calm, but she was so calm that it made his heart ache. The doctor always liked patients who were so cooperative. Seeing that she was too calm and quiet, he said to her patiently, "It was our best medical team who performed the surgery for you. Please rest assured that your fertility was not affected. After you recover, you can have another child. The 2-month-old child is just a small embryo. Don't be too sad. Your injury is really serious. Falling at that speed is equivalent to falling from at least 4 or 5 floors. You are lucky to be alive. You will continue to have everything in the future. Rest well and recover." Jin Wan closed her eyes silently and nodded slowly and weakly. 2 days later, as the doctor said, Jin Wan could be transferred from the ICU to a general ward. Jin Wan was still sleeping when she was transferred to the ward. When she woke up, she was already lying on the bed. Feng Ling pushed the door open and saw that Jin Wan was lying there motionless with her eyes open, looking at the ceiling of the ward. She walked in. Madame Imo came just now, but you were still sleeping. She personally made chicken soup for you to nourish your body. With that, Feng Ling came over and opened a white thermos flask by the bed. The fragrance from it instantly wafted out. Jinwan had been unconscious for 5 days and had been in the ICU with an oxygen tube for 2 days. She hadn't spoken for a week. When she smelled the fragrance, her chapped lips moved. She wanted to speak, but her voice was too hoarse. "Where is Mo Jingshan?" Jinwan asked where Mo Jingshan was, not how he was now. If the answer was that he was still in the hospital, it meant that at least he was still alive. If the answer was not in the hospital, Jinwan didn't dare to think further. She turned to look at Feng Ling, who was helping her to ladle the chicken soup. "Answer me." Feng Ling ladled the chicken soup out and gently stirred it in the bowl with a spoon to make the soup less hot. While stirring, she said, "The body and the interior of the car were seriously deformed. Mr. Mo's driver's seat was too narrow. When his head was hit, a steel bar in the car pierced Mr. Mo's cervical vertebra and spine, and another one directly penetrated his shoulder." Jinwan's hands on her sides instantly clenched, and her body was cold. Chapter 355. Feng Ling came over and shook the head of Jinwan's bed, trying to feed her soup. Jinwan didn't open her mouth, but looked silently at the door. After a long silence, she asked, "His cervical spine and spinal nerves were injured. Will he wake up?" Feng Ling tightened her grip on the spoon. Although Jinwan was not a medical student, she certainly knew the most basic human knowledge. The spine and cervical spine were both key parts of the brain. Even if Mr. Mo's vital organs were not injured, it was a miracle that he could survive such a serious car accident. But judging from the fact that he had been in a coma for 7 days and was still in danger, it was unknown whether he could wake up or not. The doctor had said that there was only a 30% chance that Mr. Mo could survive. If he couldn't hold on, the result of the treatment was likely to be a coma. But she couldn't tell Jinwan this at all. But now, even if she didn't say it, Jinwan could guess it. Feng Ling was silent for a moment, sat by the bed, and put the bowl to her mouth. "Mrs. Mo has been in the hospital these days. She made this soup and brought it to you. Drink some first." "Mrs. Mo?" Jinwan looked at the chicken soup in a bowl. Sure enough, Ms. Wanju's cooking skills were really good. She could smell the soup just like a chef. She couldn't imagine how Wanju felt when she endured the pain of losing her son and the pain of her daughter-in-law's miscarriage and insisted on making soup for her. "Drink some. Mrs. Mo's pain and worry are no less than yours, but she is really strong. For Mr. Mo's sake, you have a hold on, especially you. Now you have to take good care of your body. And if you drink this soup, Mrs. Mo will feel better." Jinwan obediently took a sip. It was indeed delicious. It was light, but not tasteless. How long will it take for him to pass the critical period? After a few sips, Jinwan couldn't drink anymore and asked hoarsely. Knowing that she couldn't drink now, Feng Ling put the bowl aside and answered, "I don't know. He still needs to be observed and treated. Dr. Chin has rushed here after receiving the news. Don't worry about the medical environment in the United States. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, they will use the best medicine and medical means to save Mr. Mo, since Feng Ling had said so." Even if Jinwan's heart was falling apart, she could only keep calm on the surface. They didn't want her to be too sad. It was unnecessary for her to be sad now. The only thing she could do was not to let them worry about her. After another week, Mo Jingshan was still in a coma. There were even a few times when he was critically ill but was saved in an emergency. During this period, Jinwan couldn't sleep well every night. As long as she closed her eyes, she would see the scene of the black Bentley rushing over in front of her. The loud crash and the soaring shock woke her up again and again, and then she couldn't sleep anymore. These days, the news she learned from Feng Ling was that Su Shui died in the car with the spontaneous combustion system. When the Los Angeles police came to investigate, they did presume that Su Shui had some grudges with Jinwan, and because of her emotional instability, she wanted to die with Jinwan. But in the end, she died in the exploding car. When the police went to the Su family to collect evidence, Elder Su and Su Jilan didn't say much. Only Su Jilan told the media that Su Shui was her closest cousin, and she didn't expect her to be so crazy that she would go to such extremes as dying with others, one by one. The responsibility was piled on Su Shui. Dead men tell no tales. Although this case was not closed hastily, the police had basically confirmed this situation, so they did not continue to search for the truth so seriously. Even if Jin Wan wanted to confront Su Jilan now, she couldn't go out of the hospital, and Mo Jingshan hadn't woken up. She didn't have the energy to identify or accuse Su Shui. After all, she didn't have any evidence. Su Jilan really made use of Su Shui. Everything was so natural that even the police with a keen sense of smell didn't notice anything wrong. But Jinwan wouldn't let go of the murderer who caused her miscarriage. Time passed day by day. Jinwan couldn't get up at first, but a few days later, she could walk around the ward, and half a month later, she could occasionally go to Mo Jingshan's ICU and stare blankly. There was no glass in this ward, so she couldn't see what was going on inside or the people inside. She could only feel the man a few meters away from her through the wall, but somehow she felt he was so far away. Every day, the first thing Jin Wan asked when she woke up is, Mo Jingshan awake? The answer she got was a shake of the head. Jin Wan couldn't imagine that he had been in a coma for nearly 20 days, but from the doctor's occasional conversations, she could tell that the worst result was that he would sleep forever. The winter nights in Los Angeles were really cold. Standing outside Mo Jingshan's ward, Jin Wan raised her hand and touched the cold wall. The light in the wall had been out for a long time, but she still refused to leave. She just wanted to stay here with him, waiting for him to wake up and open his eyes. After being separated by the wall for so many days, Jin Wan recalled her relationship with Mo Jingshan in her previous life. It was so simple for a person to disappear from life. Mo Jingshan disappeared so completely in those 10 years, just like now, silently and without a trace. Fate seemed to play a big joke on Jin Wan. She thought she had found back everything she had lost in her previous life, but now it seemed to be pulling away bit by bit. In her previous life, Mo Jingshan could return to China safely after 10 years. How could he stay in coma now? 2 days later, Jin Wan squatted alone outside Mo Jingshan's ward in the middle of the night. She looked out of the window at the moonless night sky and waited for him to wake up longer and longer. When Jin Wan was well enough to be discharged from the hospital, it had been a month since the car accident. Mo Jingshan had been in a coma for a month. 3 days ago, the doctor said that he had passed the critical period and his life had stabilized. But when would he wake up? Maybe tomorrow, or maybe never. Jin Wan wanted to stay with him in the hospital, but Wanju forced her to go back to the Mo family in Los Angeles. With Jin Wan here, Wanju felt that Mo Jingshan was also here. Seeing Jin Wan, she felt at ease and didn't want Jin Wan to be in a daze every day and night in the cold hospital. Lying in the bedroom where Mo Jingshan used to sleep, Jin Wan called him 3 times a day, even though she knew his cell phone wasn't answered. Every time, his cell phone was turned off. Jin Wan followed Wanju to the hospital again, but she still couldn't enter the ward at will. She hadn't seen him for a month. Jin Wan squatted in the corridor, holding her cell phone and texting Mo Jingshan. She only sent one sentence. Mo Jingshan, I'm scared. Dash that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.